Hello, everyone. Welcome to Zen and Fanfics. Today we are featuring What If Deku Had Asriel Hyperdeath Quirk. The story is written by Dog Day 2006 on Wattpad. Before we start, please like and subscribe for more content. Now let's dive into the story. The moon hung silently over Mizudafu, casting pale streaks of light through the open window of a small apartment. Within the softly lit bedroom, a child stirred. Little Izuku Midoriya, only 5 years old, lay nestled beneath a green all-might blanket. He didn't wake like most would, not with a jolt or a gasp, but with a sleepy yawn as a strange warmth coursed through his limbs. His fingers tingled. His chest fluttered. Something was changing. He sat up slowly, still half asleep, eyes glazed with the gentle haze of dreams. His tiny hands rubbed at his face, pausing when he felt something soft and unfamiliar. His nose was longer. His face stretched. No, his hands too. White fur coated his arms. Confused, the boy blinked and looked down. His feet were hooves. His chest had muscle now, not the softness of a child's belly. He looked like a tiny creature from one of his fairy tale books, like a little beast, but not scary. His tail flicked behind him. Still too sleepy to panic, Izuku grabbed his blanket, still dragging on the floor, and stumbled toward the hallway. He rubbed his eye again, blinking lazily. It wasn't until he walked into the hallway that the world changed once more. Glowing shapes danced around the edges of his vision. No, not shapes. Hearts. Floating, flickering orbs hovered near the chests of people through walls, through the floors. He could see them somehow. Glowing red, bright green, soft yellow. Some were whole, others cracked, dim, or barely holding together. And some pulsed with light so radiant it made him stop and stare. He tilted his head, blankly watching a man in the apartment below pass by. The man's soul was jagged and dark, like smoke curling inside glass. It made Izuku frown, but he didn't understand why. He just clutched his blanket tighter and continued down the hallway. He raised a small, furred hand and knocked softly. "Mama," he mumbled, not fully aware of the strange weight in his voice. "Time for kindergarten." The door creaked open. A sleepy voice called, "Izuku?" "Sweetheart, it's..." Inko Midoriya stopped. Her heart thudded. She looked down at the small figure standing in the hallway, barely taller than her hip, wrapped in his green blanket with tiny hooves poking out beneath. Glowing gold eyes stared up at her from a soft, white-furred face. His hands were clawed but still small. His horns curved slightly back from his fluffy hair. And he was smiling, oblivious. "Mama, I think I grew funny." Inko stared, frozen for a long second. Her hand rose slowly to cover her mouth, but she didn't scream. She didn't flinch. Tears filled her eyes, but not of fear. "Izuku, baby, what you're..." She fell to her knees and pulled him into her arms, wrapping the blanket tighter around him as her hand shook. "It's okay. It's okay," she whispered into his fur. "You're still my boy. You're still my sweet boy." Hospital later that morning. The car ride to the hospital was quiet. Izuku sat in the back seat, strapped in carefully, hugging his blanket. His ears twitched now and then, alert but calm. He stared out the window, watching pedestrians walk by. He could still see them. Souls. Some flickered, some burned. Some were like cracked porcelain. One man walking his dog had a soul so dim it barely hovered in place. Another girl, skipping rope, had a vibrant gold one. Each soul floated just beside their chest, visible only to him. None of the people reacted. They didn't see it. Only he did. He didn't say anything. He didn't know how. But he watched, silently, taking it all in like only Izuku Midoriya could. And deep in his chest, though he didn't understand it yet, something old and powerful stirred. A gift, not of strength or speed, but of something more sacred. The power to touch not the body, but the soul. White light flickered overhead, the soft hum of fluorescent bulbs echoing in the sterile hospital room. Izuku sat on the edge of the examination table, legs dangling, his green all-might blanket draped over his lap. His small claws fidgeted with the fabric while his golden eyes wandered the room, occasionally drifting toward the pulsing orbs only he could see. Souls. One floated gently behind. The nurse's back, bright pink, with a nervous tremble. Another near the receptionist was faded and cracked, held together by flickers of hope. Izuku tilted his head at them, quietly, like they were birds only he could see. Inko sat close, her hand resting gently over his. Her eyes, red from tears and lack of sleep, stayed fixed on the door as heavy footsteps approached. Then it opened. A doctor entered, a tall man in his mid-40s, glasses low on his nose, clipboard in hand. His face was unreadable. He looked at the child, then at Inko. "Mrs. Midoriya," he said quietly, "we've completed the quirk analysis." Inko sat up straighter. Is he okay?" The doctor glanced back at Izuku, then stepped closer. "Your son's quirk manifested early. Mutation-based. His biology has permanently changed. He now exhibits traits of an anthropomorphic creature, likely a goat or similar species." Inko nodded shakily. "I see." And the floating things he sees. "Souls," the doctor said plainly. "Your son can perceive and interact with the human soul directly." Inko blinked. "He can what?" The doctor tapped his clipboard, sighing. "It's not just perception. Izuku has access to what we can only describe as soul energy, a raw metaphysical force that exists independently of the body. And more importantly, he looked directly at her. He can weaponize it." Izuku blinked slowly, eyes lifting to the doctor. "He can shape his own soul's energy into physical constructs," the man continued. "Specifically, he's already instinctively created a blade, a type of ethereal weapon formed of pure essence." "Like a sword?" Inko asked, stunned. The doctor nodded grimly. "Yes, a weapon made of his soul. And it cuts only the soul, not the body." Inko's face paled. "That sounds terrifying." "It is," the doctor replied bluntly. "Because if a soul is cut in half, it may kill the person instantly. It doesn't matter how strong their body is. Their will, their mind, all of it can be severed. And worse." He turned toward Izuku, who was quietly watching him with a sleepy, curious gaze. "If your son becomes angry enough, if he ever feels true, destructive rage, he could do it accidentally." The room fell silent. Inko's hand clenched the edge of the bed, trembling. "You mean he could kill someone?" "Yes," the doctor said softly. "If he's pushed that far. This isn't a quirk that leaves bruises, Mrs. Midoriya. This is a quirk that bypasses the body and strikes the spirit directly. A single misstep could be fatal." He crouched down to Izuku's level, trying to meet his gaze. "You have a very special gift, Izuku, but it's also very, very dangerous. That's why you need a promise to never use it unless you're sure. Unless you're protecting someone. Can you promise that?" Izuku blinked once, then looked at his small white hand. His claws twitched. A faint, golden light shimmered at his palm. With a hum like wind chimes, a thin soul blade flickered into being, elegant, curved, and glowing like sunlight through water. It felt warm in his hand. Familiar. He stared at it for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Okay," he whispered. "I won't hurt anyone." The doctor stood, clearly shaken. "We'll arrange for quirk counseling and a developmental specialist. But you need to understand, this isn't something we can suppress. This is part of who he is." Inko nodded, eyes full of tears. "I understand." Crescent moon that night. In bed once again, Izuku stared at the ceiling, tail flicking slowly beneath the covers. His eyes glowed faintly in the dark. The soft sound of the city outside drifted in through the window. He held his small hand up and summoned it again. The soul blade. It lit the room in gold and blue light, appealing and silent. It didn't hum like a weapon. It pulsed like a heartbeat. He stared at it, not with fear, but with the silent understanding of a child who'd been changed forever. The kindergarten classroom looked the same as it always had. Colorful drawings on the walls, alphabet banners above the whiteboard, and a reading corner stacked with picture books. But to Izuku, it all felt quieter now. Maybe it was the way the lights flickered a little more, or how he could see the teacher's soul, soft and lavender, fluttering nervously behind her. Maybe it was how he could see the other kids' souls too, bouncing, cracking, trembling like jellyfish in a tank. But the stairs? Those he felt. They all turned when he walked in. The fur, the hoofs, the small horns poking through his curly hair, his long tail tucked against his leg. His blanket wasn't with him this time, just his tiny backpack and a hesitant smile. Deku. The voice rang out sharp and familiar. Katsuki Bakugo stomped across the room with that usual determined scowl on his face. His hands were shoved in his pockets, but his eyes were wide with something unusual: curiosity. What the heck happened to you? Izuku's ears twitched. He stopped walking. I got my quirk. Bakugo stared at him, then glanced up and down, as if seeing him for the first time. You look like a goat. Izuku fidgeted with his claws. I think I kinda am now. A few other kids crept closer. Some whispered. Others just watched. But Bakugo didn't seem scared, just interested. What's your quirk? He asked flatly. Tell me. Izuku hesitated, then slowly said, I can see souls. A beat of silence. Some kids blinked. One even said, huh. Souls. Bakugo repeated, raising a brow. Like ghost stuff. Kinda. Izuku nodded, scratching his arm. They're like floating lights. They show how people feel. I can touch them too, I think. Bakugo narrowed his eyes. Touch him how? Izuku looked nervous. He glanced at the teacher, still busy talking to another parent, and then down at his own small, furred hand. I can grab them if I try hard enough. The room went quiet for a second. Bakugo leaned forward slightly. Do it. Grab mine, Bakugo said, smirking. You said you can. So do it. I don't want to hurt you. Come on, Deku, he scoffed. I'm not a baby. Izuku bit his lip. The other students were definitely watching now, eyes wide, whispering behind hands. Finally, with a shaky breath, Izuku raised his hand toward Bakugo's chest. I'll just try gently. He extended his fingers, open like he was reaching towards something invisible. For a second, nothing happened. Then Bakugo's eyes widened. Something was there. A weight in the air. A strange pressure like fingers pressing into his chest, but from the inside. Why, he muttered. Izuku flinched. Sorry. His hand clenched slightly. The pressure deepened, and Bakugo gasped, staggering half a step backward. Okay, stop, he barked, grabbing Izuku's wrist. What the hell was that? Izuku instantly let go, pulling his hand back like he'd touched fire. I didn't mean to. I just tried to hold it, I swear. Bakugo clutched his chest, staring at him with a look that was no longer just curiosity, but awe. The other students were stunned into silence. I felt that, Bakugo muttered. It felt like you had a string tied to my heart. Izuku shrank a little. I'm really sorry. Bakugo blinked, then grinned. That's awesome. Izuku looked up, surprised. You can grab souls. That's way cooler than most of the dumb quirks here, Bakugo said, looking over his shoulder at the stunned classmates. That's like a secret weapon. Izuku blinked. You are not scared. Bakugo scoffed. Why would I be scared of you? You're still Deku. Just fuzzier. A small smile crept onto Izuku's face. And for the first time since the night his quirk awakened, he felt something warm blooming in his chest. Not fear, not pressure. Just relief. The classroom was silent. Dust floated through the afternoon light, undisturbed by the ticking clock or the empty desks. School had let out nearly an hour ago, but Izuku stayed behind in the far back room, one rarely used tucked near the art wing. He stood alone, fingers twitching with quiet anticipation. In the last 9 years, he'd grown, not just taller, but heavier in presence. His white fur was thicker, his horns now curved slightly like blades. His arms had gained muscle without a single push-up, as if his body adapted alongside his quirk. His cloak-like uniform hung loosely. Around his shoulders, barely hiding the powerful soul energy constantly pulsing beneath the surface. And his eyes, glowing white irises, pitch-black scara. They never stopped glowing now. Izuku raised his hand and took a deep breath. With a gentle hum, the air around him shimmered. Light folded inward. A radiant streak formed in his palm, twisting and spiraling until it solidified. Then, phew, the soul sword appeared. 3 feet long. elegant. No metal or steel. Just pure energy, translucent yet blinding, shifting like a blade made of starlight and rainbows. Every inch pulsed with his heartbeat. He stared at it in awe, whispering to himself, "It's grown again." He traced a clawed finger along the flat edge. No heat, no sound, but the weight, the pressure on his spirit, it was immense. This wasn't a toy. It wasn't a dream. This sword could kill. Suddenly, slam, the door burst open. Deku. Izuku jolted and turned. Bakugo stood in the doorway, panting slightly, school bag slung carelessly over his shoulder. His eyes immediately locked onto the blade and froze. What the hell is that? Izuku's ears flicked, tail tightening. Kakin, wait. Bakugo stormed in, slamming the door behind him. No, you don't get to hide this. I've been your friend since we were kids. What the hell is that sword? I didn't mean for you to see it. You've had this for 9 years and never told me. You said you grabbed souls, not cut them. Izuku backed up against the wall, the sword flickering dangerously in his grip. I didn't want to scare you. You lied. Bakugo shouted, grabbing him by the collar and shoving him into the wall. The sword flickered brighter. Izuku's breath hitched. His heart raced. And then his voice cracked. You think I wanted this? Bakugo flinched as the sword flared. Not toward him, but away, quivering like a sunburst restrained by will alone. I didn't choose this, Kakin. Izuku snapped, voice shaking. Every year, it grows bigger. Every year, I feel it press harder against people's souls. If I even swing this the wrong way, if I lose control, I could kill someone. He threw the sword aside. It vanished in sparks mid-air and pushed Bakugo off him. I don't train with it. I don't play with it. I don't even sleep while knowing I have it. Because if I ever hurt someone with it, there's no taking it back. Bakugo was silent. Izuku's glowing eyes filled with tears. I'm dangerous, okay? That's the truth. And every time I feel mad or scared or alone, I remember that I'm the only kid in school who could end a life with one bad dream. He stormed past Bakugo, tail whipping behind him, claws curled tight at his sides. Don't follow me. The door shut hard behind him. Bakugo stood frozen. His chest felt tight, but not from fear. From guilt. Steam curled gently through the tiled bathroom, rising from the warm bath that filled the space with a comforting fog. The world outside was quiet, just the hum of city life beyond the apartment windows. But inside, Izuku Midoriya lay submerged beneath the surface, his eyes closed, ears twitching faintly. The water hugged his form, soaking through his fur. The warmth dulled the buzzing storm in his chest, just a little. His glowing white eyes, dimmed with stress, stared at the ceiling above. No soul lights here. No sword. Just stillness. And silence. He needed this. He had stormed home after the fight. Ignored every call. Turned his phone screen down each time it lit up with the same name. Kakin. Call 1. Call 2. Call 3. Then texts. Deku. Pick up. We need to talk. I didn't mean to yell. Izuku shut them out. He'd told the truth. Every word. And it still ended with him feeling like the monster they all feared he might become. I don't train with it. I don't even sleep while knowing I have it. A tear slid down the side of his cheek, disappearing into the bathwater. His ears twitched again. Knock, knock, knock. At first, he thought it was the pipes. Or the neighbors. Knock, knock, knock. Harder now. From the front door. Izuku sat up slightly, water sloshing around his chest. His wet fur clung to his arms and shoulders, and a bit of soap drifted past. Knock, knock, knock. Oh, come on. He grumbled, flicking his tail in frustration. His mother wasn't home, off having a well-deserved girls' night with Mitsuki Bakugo, laughing over wine and probably swapping baby stories. Which meant Izuku reached for his towel, grumbling the entire way out of the bath. He dried himself quickly, not perfectly, but enough to avoid dripping everywhere. His fluffy white fur puffed out slightly from the heat and moisture. He wrapped a towel around his waist and left another hanging around his neck. His phone vibrated again. One message. Can we talk? Bakugo. Izuku stood by the door for a long second, staring at the message. Then another knock, lighter this time. TCH. He tossed his towel over his shoulders again and padded barefoot across the floor to the front door. He cracked it open, steam still drifting faintly from the bathroom behind him. Bakugo stood there, hands in his pockets, hood up, head down. The moment he looked up and saw Izuku's soaked fur and towel, his mouth opened. Shut up. Izuku grumbled before he could say anything. Bakugo blinked. I didn't even not a word. Izuku sighed. He stepped aside. Come in. The apartment was still warm from a bath. A faint trail of steam drifted from the cracked bathroom door, and the scent of shampoo still lingered in the air. Izuku sat cross-legged on the living room couch, now dry and dressed in an old green hoodie and shorts. His fur puffed out awkwardly in some places, and his tail flicked lazily behind the cushion. His glowing eyes, white and soft against black scara, watched the boy pacing just a few feet away. Bakugo had taken off his shoes, but hadn't sat down yet. He walked in circles near the kitchen counter, hands stuffed in his pockets, jaw clenched. So, Izuku finally said. Bakugo grunted. Don't start. You're the one who knocked on my door like you were going to kick it in. Bakugo didn't reply. The silence between them stretched until it ached. I meant what I said, Izuku added, eyes narrowing. That sword? It's not a hero's weapon. I don't even know if I'm supposed to have something like that. You don't get to decide that. Izuku blinked. What? Bakugo finally stopped pacing. He turned to face him, scowling, not with anger, but with discomfort. Like the words in his mouth didn't want to come out. You think being scary makes you not a hero? He said. You think having power that might hurt someone means you can't save people? Then what, Deku? What am I? My quirk is explosions. I burn people when I screw up. That's not the same. It's exactly the same. Izuku looked down. His claws clenched the fabric of his hoodie. You don't see the way I do, Kakin. You don't see people's souls. You don't know how close they are to breaking. I do. Every day. I see ones that are cracked, barely holding together. If I grab one too hard, it's not a bruise. It's done. Bakugo stared. He wanted to argue. Wanted to yell. Wanted to say, then don't mess up. But instead, he just sighed. You're such a nerd, he muttered, still talking like a philosopher. Izuku smiled faintly. You always say that. Bakugo finally sat on the floor, leaning back against the coffee table. They sat in quiet for a while. Then, after a long pause, You going anyway? Bakugo asked, voice low. Izuku didn't answer right away. His eyes dimmed slightly, looking distant. The memory of holding that rainbow blade in his hand flashed across his mind. The way it felt to let it grow. The way the world seemed to watch him every time he drew it. I think I will, he finally said. Yeah. Bakugo raised an eyebrow. For real. Izuku nodded. I've thought about it for a long time. I want to help people. Even if my quirk scares them. Even if it scares me. Bakugo looked at him, really looked at him. The goat-like face. The glowing eyes. The posture of someone who had carried something heavy since they were 5 years old. You'll get in, Bakugo said after a beat. Izuku turned, blinking. What makes you so sure? Bakugo grinned. 'Cause if you don't, I won't have anyone strong enough to beat me. Izuku's smile grew. Thanks, Kakin. Bakugo stood and grabbed his jacket. Don't thank me yet. I'm not holding back in the entrance exam. I wouldn't want you to. As the front door opened and Bakugo stepped out into the night, the tension between them didn't vanish, but it faded just enough to make space. Not forgiveness, but understanding. The soul sword shimmered in the dark, suspended above Izuku's open palms. He sat cross-legged in his bedroom, blinds drawn, the moonlight slipping through the cracks. The blade hovered without physical support, its form made of flickering rainbow light and gentle pulses of ethereal energy. It looked peaceful, appealing even. But Izuku knew better. Every night since the argument with Bakugo, he'd summoned it, watched it grow, examined its structure. It had no edge, but it was sharper than any blade. It didn't leave cuts or bruises. It didn't tear muscle or break bone. It bypassed all of that. It went straight for the soul. I can't practice with this, he thought grimly. Not on dummies. Not on targets. Not without risking someone's spirit. Which meant he needed something else. Building construction a few days later. Tucked in an industrial corner of Mizudafu was a reinforced weapons testing facility, a place where older kids preparing for hero school trained with heavy gear or tested compatibility with various support items. Anyone could book an appointment if they signed a waiver and paid the fee. But today, as Izuku stepped through the front doors, something felt off. The lobby was too quiet. The lights flickered faintly overhead. A receptionist's chair was knocked over. Papers were strewn across the counter. Izuku's ears twitched. His black scare narrowed under glowing eyes. Then a crash. Voices. Yelling. Izuku ducked behind a support beam just as a man in a tattered coat walked through a side hallway, dragging a sack behind him filled with gear and tools. Villains. Izuku's claws flexed. He could see it. The man's soul was dark orange, cracked, and pulsing erratically with greed and stress. Suddenly, another henchman turned the corner and locked eyes with him. Hey, kid, no time. Instinct moved faster than thought. Izuku spun around and grabbed the nearest weapon from the rack near the wall, a massive, steel war hammer meant for strength training. Easily over 4 feet long with a thick, reinforced head. It should have been too heavy, but in his hands it felt like nothing. The henchman charged, grinning. Izuku stepped forward with perfect balance, surprising even himself, and swung the hammer in a wide arc crack. The force of the blow sent the man flying. He crashed backward into a pile of lockers, which collapsed, slamming into the hallway behind him, and into the main villain, who had just stepped out with an armful of stolen tech. GHH, the leader shouted as he was knocked off his feet and through the outer wall, crashing into the street outside with a cloud of debris. Everything went silent. Izuku stood in the center of the lobby, hammer resting in his hand, the tip touching the ground with a low thunk. Chains a few minutes later, police sirens whined in the distance. The owner of the facility, a tall, broad man with cybernetic arms and grizzled eyes, stepped out from behind the locked back office door, where he'd been hiding from the intruders. He took one look at the unconscious villains, then turned to Izuku, who was now standing quietly with the hammer leaned against his shoulder. You did all this? Izuku nodded slowly. I guess. The man whistled, impressed. You're not even in UA yet, are you? No, sir. The man walked over, patting the hammer gently. That thing was built for grown pro heroes in power suits. Most kids can't even lift it. Izuku blinked. It felt light. The man smiled. Then maybe it's meant for you. He paused, then crossed his arms. You got power, kid. But more importantly, you've got instincts. Tell you what, for what you just did, you can use the facility for free. Anytime. All the gear, all the tools. Izuku's eyes widened. Wait, seriously? The man nodded. Seriously. I've seen a lot of quirks come through here, but I've never seen someone swing a war hammer like they were born with it. Izuku glanced at the hammer. Heavy, brutal, solid. The opposite of his soul blade in every way. But somehow, it felt right. Like he'd found the weight he needed to carry his strength, not just his danger. Thank you, Izuku said softly. The war hammer hummed in his grip, low and steady. Not with energy, but from the whirring force of momentum as Izuku spun it in a wide arc before slamming it down into the digital ground. Boom! The simulated villain shuddered and vanished in light. Target 4 neutralized. Izuku didn't stop moving. Another enemy, tall, with simulated armor and enhanced speed. Charged from the right, holographic claws raised. Izuku twisted on his hoved foot, lifted the hammer over his shoulder like it weighed nothing, and brought it down on the floor. Wham! The shockwave sent the hologram flying, breaking into shards of hard light midair. Target 5 neutralized. The lights dimmed. A soft ping echoed across the room. Combat challenge completed. Score, 38,400. Time, 2:17. Position on local leaderboard, number 6. Izuku panted softly, shoulders rising and falling beneath his sleeveless training hoodie. His glowing white eyes dimmed slightly as the adrenaline settled. Sweat clung to his fur, matting patches of his arms and shoulders. He blinked. 6th place? He murmured. His tail flicked in surprise. He hadn't even meant to go that hard. He was just focused. Across the wall of the simulation room, a massive digital leaderboard flickered to life. Hero hopefuls from all over Mizutofu had ranked here. Kids training for UA, Shiketsu, CI, or even private programs. He saw names above his, glowing in gold. Number 1, Tankstorm. Number 2, Jet Crasher. Number 3, Punchline. Number 4, Frost Hex. Number 5, Kadro Kai, and now, tucked right beneath them, Number 6, Midoriya I. Style, heavy arms weapon. Reinforced war hammer. Izuku exhaled and leaned on the hammer for a moment. He could feel it. He was getting stronger. Not just in body, though his arms and legs had visibly bulked up, but in presence, balance, focus. The hammer wasn't just a weapon anymore. It was a grounding point. Every time the soul sword flickered at the edge of his mind, tempting him to summon it, to slice, to test, to feel, he grabbed the hammer instead. Heavy, real, safe. Wrench later that evening, as Izuku exited the simulation chamber, towel around his shoulders, he was greeted by the facility owner again, the tall man with cybernetic arms and a perpetually unimpressed expression. "You're number 6 now," the man grunted. "You trying to knock Tankstorm out of his spot?" Izuku chuckled nervously. "I didn't even mean to rank it all." "You will," the man replied. "I've seen kids train hard. You train like you're holding something back, like you're trying not to hurt someone." Izuku tensed slightly. "That's because I am." The owner didn't push. Instead, he crossed his arms and nodded at the hammer slung over Izuku's back. "You make that thing sing. Better than anyone I've seen. But here's the truth, kid. That hammer's only going to take you so far. One day, the thing you're afraid of using, the thing you're really holding back." His eyes narrowed slightly. "You're going to have to choose whether or not to draw it." Izuku didn't respond, because he already knew what he meant. And somewhere deep inside, pulsing behind his chest like a heartbeat of light and danger, the soul sword waited. The doors to the weapons facility hissed open as a man in black stepped inside, scarf trailing faintly behind him like a shadow. Shota Aizawa, better known as Eraserhead, scanned the lobby with half-lidded eyes. His boots echoed quietly on the concrete, and the receptionist blinked in confusion before silently nodding him through. He wasn't here on official business, just curiosity. He hadn't touched a simulation rig in years, not since his pro days were fully locked in. But a few days ago, one of his students mentioned the old Fort Bastion training facility was still active, and as always, he found himself drawn to places where promising kids try to break their limits. Especially now, with UA's entrance exam on the horizon. He stepped into the observation lounge, brushing past a pair of sweaty teens comparing scores, and turned his gaze to the leaderboard. Top 10 names, ranked by efficiency, power, technique. He expected the usual. He found something else. Number 1, Tankstorm. Number 2, Midoriya I. Style, heavy arms. Warhammer. Aizawa stared for a moment. Midoriya? He didn't recognize the name, but the combat logs beside the leaderboard told a different story. A small screen cycled through footage of each run. A few frames showed a goat-like teen with white fur, broad shoulders, glowing white eyes, and a towering hammer in his hands. No wasted movement, no flair, just raw, controlled power. That swing could crush reinforced concrete, Aizawa thought, and he's barely sweating. Then a familiar voice grunted behind him. "Came to see if you're still in the top 10, Eraserhead." Aizawa turned. It was the facility owner, the same man who'd built this place from the ground up. His name was Heiga, but everyone just called him Gear Arm, thanks to the mechanical limbs and gruff attitude. "Wasn't expecting you to drop by," Gear Arm said, sipping from a dented mug. "You scouting?" "Not officially," Aizawa replied. "But I might be now." He nodded toward the screen where Izuku was finishing a simulation, breathing steady, hammer slung over one shoulder. "That kid, Midoriya, he yours?" "Found it by accident," Gear Arm said. "Came in a couple weeks ago, looking to test out some weapons. Grabbed the heaviest one we had like it was made of foam. Wielded it like instinct. Since then, he trains like he's running out of time." Aizawa watched in silence. The footage shifted again. Izuku diving into a pack of simulated villains, spinning the hammer in a rising arc, crushing two in a single upward swing and knocking a third into a wall. Good reflexes, Aizawa murmured. Too good. He doesn't train to get stronger. He trains to stay calm. Geararm paused, setting down his mug. You can tell, when a kid's scared of their own quirk. I've seen all kinds. But him? Every move he makes is like he's afraid to slip. Aizawa narrowed his eyes. He doesn't use his quirk during these? Not even once, Geararm said. Doesn't even touch it. Just the hammer. Then why is he second? Because he's better than the others. That was enough to earn a real pause from Aizawa. His gaze drifted back to the leaderboard. Number 2, without his quirk. Then Aizawa glanced at the war hammer hanging on the nearby display wall. He could tell it was the same one, thick, reinforced, meant for high-tier strength builds. He nodded toward it. If he breaks the record, he said quietly, I'll pay for the hammer myself. He should have something that's his. But Geararm just smirked. He doesn't know it, he said, but it's already his. Kid earned it. I'm not charging someone who might shatter the soul just from picking the wrong fight. Aizawa turned again, this time studying the footage of Izuku between battles. Sitting with his head down, towel around his shoulders, eyes glowing faintly even when dimmed. There was pain there, and DSBLN, and a strange, haunting quiet. Tell me more about him, Aizawa said. Geararm folded his arms. Oh, you're gonna love this story. The morning air buzzed with tension. Hundreds of hopeful students crowded outside the gates of UA High School, most chatting nervously, others standing stiff with focus. Dozens of different shapes, colors, quirks, and styles. Everyone dreaming of one thing, becoming a pro hero. But no one could miss the strange figure walking steadily toward the front entrance. White fur, sharp horns, thick arms and legs padded beneath a dark, sleeveless hoodie and custom black pants tailored for Digitigrade legs. His glowing white eyes flicked calmly between the buildings as he walked, not in awe, but in quiet understanding. Izuku Midoriya. Over one shoulder, he carried a massive, reinforced case, matte black and metal-lined, nearly the size of a guitar case but thicker, heavier, and covered in locking runes and mechanical latches. The weight didn't bother him. What was inside had been forged by Geararm himself. A gift, a symbol, his weapon, his anchor. Around him, the whispering started fast. Who the hell is that? Is that a mutation quirk or a costume? Wait, are horns allowed? He looks like a boss character. What's in the case? Eyes flicked to the strange boy as he passed. Izuku kept walking, unfazed. His hooves clacked softly against the pavement. Then, whap, a loud slap to the back jolted him forward. He turned, blinking. Kakin, you really had to bring your weird butt coffin with you? Bakugo asked, grinning, hands stuffed in his pockets. What is that? A rocket launcher? A backup Deku? Izuku chuckled, adjusting the strap. It's a secret. Bakugo narrowed his eyes, smirking. If it's what I think it is, you're going to freak some people out. Good. The two walked side by side toward the gates, old tension buried beneath shared silence. I saw your name on Fort Bastion's board, Bakugo said casually. Second place. That real? Yeah. Still holding back? Hey, little. Bakugo scoffed. Figures. The crowd parted slightly as the two passed, the horn boy and the explosion brat, both walking like they'd already claimed their spots. Memo inside. Written exam hall. The auditorium was huge, lined with rows of desks spaced evenly beneath floodlights. Proctors handed out test packets while dozens of students took their seats. Izuku sat near the front, setting the hammer case gently beside him. A few students nearby kept glancing nervously at it. One girl whispered something to another and then stared at his hands, thick, clawed fingers tapping lightly against the desk. He ignored it. The only person who didn't seem fazed was Bakugo, sitting just one row over, arms crossed, already looking bored. The paper flipped over. Begin. Izuku's claws gripped the pencil with practiced care. Focus, he told himself. One test at a time. But in the back of his mind, he could feel it. The weight. The heartbeat. The hammer waiting in its case. Not humming with power, but patience. Because it knew something the others didn't. The real exam hadn't even started yet. The testing grounds of Section A buzzed with quiet chatter, nerves, and half-stifled bravado. Teenagers from all walks of life milled near the gates of the mock city battleground, stretching, bouncing in place, or adjusting their gear. A few cracked jokes. Some stayed silent. None of them noticed him at first. Not until he moved to the center. Izuku Midoriya stepped through the crowd with even, heavy footfalls, each one a soft thud of hoof against pavement. His white fur caught the morning sun, his glowing white eyes and black scara reflecting nothing but focus. Over one shoulder, the massive black case strapped to him glinted faintly with reinforced metal and thick locks. Still, no one paid him much attention. Just another mutation quirk. Just another tall guy with horns. Then, he set the case down, unlatched it, and slowly peeled off his shirt. Gasps echoed instantly. Dozens of heads turned. Muscles rippled beneath sleek white fur. Broad shoulders flexing as Izuku adjusted the case with one hand and unlatched the final lock. His physique wasn't just defined. It was naturally sculpted, a blend of power and symmetry that looked almost carved from marble. Years of heavy weapon handling had molded him. Half the girls, and more than a few boys, visibly swooned. A few people's knees buckled. One girl dropped her water bottle next to her stunned boyfriend. And then he opened the case. Inside sat a massive war hammer, gleaming with matte silver edges and an obsidian core threaded with veins of glowing light. Near the flat of the head, engraved deeply into the steel, was a shimmering white angelic emblem. The one you provided. A circle flanked by upward wings, and 3 triangles below like divine teeth. The mark of mercy and judgment. It radiated weight. History. Meaning. Now people stared. Yo, what the hell is that? He brought a war hammer. Is that a support item? That thing's huge. Before anyone could say more, a voice cut through the tension like a blade. You, white-furred student. Izuku turned calmly as a tall boy. In a blue jumpsuit marched up to him. Clean-cut hair. Glasses. Rigid posture. Tenya Ida. You are violating standardized protocol, he barked. Support equipment is not to be removed from cases until the exam officially begins. Izuku raised an eyebrow. Okay, then put it away immediately. But Izuku didn't move. Instead, his gaze drifted past Ida entirely toward a short, brown-haired girl a few meters away. She was pacing nervously, hands clenched in front of her chest, muttering something about points. Her soul, to his eyes, was bright, pinkish gold, flickering like a candle trying to hold steady in the wind. Worried but hopeful, he thought. He stepped past Ida, intent on introducing himself. Wow, first years. Present mixed voice boomed from the high speakers overhead. Izuku stopped mid-step as everyone snapped to attention. Hope you studied, 'cause we're moving straight into the real exam. You'll have 10 minutes in a simulated urban battlefield. Each robot is worth points. Your job is to earn as many as you can. And remember, he cackled, there's no countdowns in real combat. The gates began to creak open behind them. Ida sputtered as his complaint was instantly overridden by the energy of the exam. And in that moment, every head turned again to the goat boy with the war hammer, who now rested the massive weapon across his shoulders with one hand. Unfazed, calm, dangerous. Bakugo from Section C's gate across the field caught sight of him. He grinned. Let's see how much you've been holding back. Deku. The moment the gate slammed open, Izuku was already moving. He didn't wait for the others to react. While students hesitated, shouted, or sprinted wildly in different directions, Izuku surged forward with terrifying momentum, his custom-forged war hammer in hand. Boom! The first robot didn't even have time to process his presence. Izuku leapt and brought the hammer down like thunder, crushing the machine's torso and sending its limbs spiraling into the air in a cloud of smoke and sparks. He pivoted before it hit the ground, already charging the next. All around him, students stared in shock. Did you see that? He just broke it in one swing. Wait, that's the goat guy from the gate. But Izuku wasn't concerned with their awe. He moved between students who were pinned down, using his hammer not just to destroy, but to redirect danger, sending robots crashing into walls or pinning them down so others could escape. He gave out instructions like a second-year pro. Your quirk works better with range. Fall back. If you trip them first, you can go for the core, center chest. Stick together, don't panic. Some listened, some didn't, but the ones who did started scoring points fast. Purple circle, then there was that kid. Izuku rounded a corner into an alley and paused mid-swing when he saw a small boy with purple ball for hair. The boy was lobbing the sticky spheres at robots, clogging their wheels and sticking them to the walls. Actually pretty effective. But he was also peeking over a bent wall at a group of girls hiding nearby. Girls changing into support gear after a brief malfunction in the mech field's environmental controls. Izuku's glowing white eyes narrowed. His grip on the hammer tightened. And then, without summoning his soul blade, he reached toward the boy's chest with one glowing hand. Just enough. Just a grip on his soul. Mineta froze. His breath hitched. He felt cold pressure inside his ribcage, like someone was gently pressing their claws inside his heart. Izuku's voice came low, controlled. If you have time to peep, you have time to fight. Mineta paled. His soul shuddered. Izuku let go. The boy immediately scurried back to flinging his sticky orbs at the enemy and nothing else. Input numbers score so far. With 15 minutes left on the clock, Bakugo was in first place with a staggering 77 villain points, pure destruction. Izuku held second with 40 villain points and 20 rescue points, a total of 60 points. The next closest student sat at 49. And then the ground shook. Dust rose in clouds. Students fell to their knees. A mechanical whine echoed across the city field. Then, towering over the rooftops, the zero-pointer. Massive, cruel, irrelevant in scoring. The thing was meant to intimidate, not be beaten. Dozens of students immediately ran, including Izuku. He turned, ready to flee like the others, not out of fear, but out of strategy. Until, help. Someone. His ears twitched. That voice, that soul. Through the settling dust, he saw her, the same short girl with brown hair from before, the one with the pink gold soul. Uraraka. Her leg was trapped beneath a collapsed pillar. Without thinking, Izuku skidded to a halt and turned back. He didn't hesitate. He didn't even yell. He just ran. His hooves struck the broken concrete hard as he rushed. Toward her, the zero-pointer loomed behind her, gears screeching, eyes glowing red. Izuku dropped the hammer beside him and lifted the rubble with both arms. His muscles screamed. His fur bristled with strain. Uraraka cried out as she pulled her leg free, crawling backward just as the zero-pointer's massive hand came crashing down. Izuku turned, raised both hands, and caught the hand. Crack! The ground split beneath his hooves as the weight of the robot's arm pressed down. Izuku's legs buckled. His knees hit the concrete. His arms trembled violently. Get out of here, he shouted, voice thick with strain. Uraraka gasped and rolled out of the way just as the robot's fingers slammed down fully onto Izuku, burying him beneath the force of an unstoppable machine. The battlefield went silent. From the observation room, Aizawa stood from his seat. That idiot, he muttered, but there was no hiding the glint of respect in his tired eyes. The battlefield was quiet, too quiet. Smoke still coiled upward from the shattered pavement. Sparks crackled faintly from the busted arm of the zero-pointer, now motionless, steam hissing from its broken joints. Uraraka had been pulled back by a small group of examinees, her eyes wide with horror. Is he? The heroes watching from the upper platform, Present Mike, Midnight, Cementas, 13, were frozen in disbelief. Then came the shout. Move the hand. Now! Aizawa barked into the radio. Within moments, support staff scrambled forward with machinery and manual levers. With a deep mechanical groan, the massive metallic hand of the zero-pointer was slowly lifted off the cracked ground. The smoke underneath began to clear. At first, there was only dust. Then, a silhouette. Two glowing white eyes burned through the haze like twin lanterns. The dust blew out in a sudden gust of wind, and standing there, hunched slightly, arms popped into place, dust pouring from his fur, and gripping his hammer, was Izuku Midoriya. Alive, standing, unbroken. Behind him, embedded in the concrete, were two perfect impact craters, one in the shape of his body, the other shaped like his hammer. For a second, no one spoke. Then Present Mike exhaled slowly. Yo, this kid is metal. Hospital recovery girl rushes in from a nearby entrance. Recovery girl waddled over as fast as her little legs could carry her, umbrella clacking with each step. She held her cane up toward him. Young man, hold still. Izuku blinked, still dazed. Let me see. You were just crushed under a zero-pointer's palm. You should have shattered bones. She reached up and pulled his hoodie back to examine his shoulders, arms, chest. No broken ribs, no fractures, just bruises. Bruises. That's it, she muttered aloud. Izuku grunted and rolled his shoulder, the joint audibly popping back into place. Think it dislocated a little, he said with a sheepish grin, voice raspy. You, young man, sit down before I glue you to the ground myself. But even as she scolded him, her eyes were studying him closely. Impossibly durable, soul-wielding, massive physical strength. And he doesn't even know what he is yet. Speech balloon Urarka's point of view nearby. Urarka watched him, the boy who risked being crushed alive just to pull her from the rubble. His white fur was matted with dust. His hammer now rested over one shoulder, its head dented and stained with machine oil. His eyes still glowing, still calm. Her chest thumped hard. She didn't even know his name, but she would. She had to. Bar chart final scores updated. The digital scoreboard above the arena flickered. Bakugo Katsuki, 77 villain points. 3 rescue points equals 80 total. Midoriya Izuku, 40 villain points. 20 rescue points. Bonus 25 heroism points. Critical self-sacrifice plus 0-pointer intervention equals 85 total. Present Mike let out a laugh over the comms. Well. Looks like we got ourselves a new top scorer, folks. Aizawa watched silently, then muttered, he's in. The late afternoon sun hung low over Mizudafu Park, casting golden light across the walking paths and creaking playground swings. The air smelled like fresh-cut grass and old vending machine soda. It was quiet, peaceful, the kind of day meant for naps and reflection. Instead, Bakugo Katsuki sat on a metal bench with his arms crossed, glaring knives at the boy beside him. Izuku Midoriya, still wearing his hoodie, for slightly puffed from a recent bath, sat quietly, sipping a sports drink. His war hammer was leaning next to the bench, wrapped in cloth. His expression was calm. Too calm, if you asked Bakugo. The scoreboard numbers had burned into Bakugo's mind since the moment they were posted. Bakugo Katsuki, 80 points. Midoriya Izuku, 85.5. Freaking points. The tension was thick enough to snap steel. Finally, Bakugo broke the silence. 5 points. Izuku blinked. Bakugo whipped toward him, face red with barely restrained rage. 5 freaking points. Izuku blinked again. Sorry. Bakugo shouted, standing up. You beat me by 5 points because you threw yourself under a 0-pointer. Who the hell does that? Izuku held up his hands. I didn't know it would give me bonus points. You didn't. You don't even know when you're winning. I was trying to save someone. Exactly, Bakugo shouted, jabbing a finger at him. That's why I'm mad. Because you're not even trying to beat me, and you still did. Izuku looked down awkwardly. It's not a competition, Kakin. Bakugo sputtered. It's always a competition. He turned away, muttering under his breath. 5 stupid points. Izuku tilted his head. You still came in second. That's amazing. Shut up. Really impressive. Shut up. I couldn't have broken 80 without the 0-pointer. Bakugo whipped back around. You know what, Deku? I'm not forgiving you for this. Izuku just smiled softly. Okay. Bakugo froze. What? I said okay. Izuku shrugged. You don't have to forgive me. Just try to beat me next time. Bakugo stared, then smirked. Oh, I will. He sat back down with a huff, glaring at the distance like he could punch the wind into SBMSN. Izuku took another sip of his drink, tail flicking gently behind the bench. "Want half of mine?" he offered. But Kugo took it without a word. And that somehow meant everything. A few days had passed since the UA entrance exam. Izuku lay on the floor of his bedroom, staring at the ceiling, dressed in nothing but an oversized hoodie and shorts. The war hammer leaned against the corner, untouched. He'd spent the past few days recovering from the fight with the zero-pointer, physically fine, but mentally fried. His mother, Inko, had been fussing over him nonstop. She still wasn't used to seeing her son throw a war machine's hand off like it was made of cardboard. Then the doorbell rang. A moment later, "Izu, there's something for you." His ears twitched. He shot upright, his heart thumping. This was it. The recording Inko handed him a small envelope marked UA High School, Hero Course Acceptance Evaluation. Inside, a black disc. He quickly set it into the small screen projector on his desk. The hologram crackled to life. Out stepped All Might. "Young Midoriya," the image boomed. "I am here to deliver the news of your performance in the entrance exam." Izuku's breath hitched. All Might grinned wide. "You impressed the judges beyond your score. You showed valor, selflessness, and power worthy of our hero course." Behind him appeared a brief playback of Izuku lifting the rubble off Uraraka, followed by him catching the zero-pointer's hand, even just for a second. It then showed Uraraka being helped off by drones, turning back to look at Izuku as he dropped to a knee. Her eyes widened in realization. Not only did you earn 40 villain points, but due to your brave actions, you earned 20 rescue points. A pause. Then All Might stepped aside. Another figure appeared, a tall silhouette with a long scarf and a single glowing eye beneath messy black hair. "Aizawa. Named Shota Aizawa. Eraserhead. I'm one of your teachers. You didn't know this, but I was the silent judge for section. Hey, I saw what you did, Midoriya." He crossed his arms. "That zero-pointer's hand would have flattened her, and you didn't hesitate. I had to twist a few arms to get rescue points assigned to it. But we don't ignore real heroism." Then back to All Might. "Congratulations, young man. You passed. Welcome to UA High School's hero course." The message ended. Izuku slumped back into his chair, his soul sword pulsing faintly from within. He got in. Elsewhere, Ochako Uraraka stared at her own acceptance letter. She'd passed. She had been overjoyed, but what stuck with her wasn't her score. It was him, the white-furred boy with glowing eyes, horns, and that calm, powerful voice. He had saved her, not just lifted rubble off her, but risked everything to shield her. She didn't even know his name, but his soul, she remembered it. It glowed like the sun in the dust and chaos. Her heart beat a little faster as she whispered, "Go boy, thank you." And for the first time, her feelings really began. The morning sun glinted against the surface of Izuku's hammer case as he stood by the front door, fur brushed neatly, uniform freshly pressed, and nerves buzzing under his skin. "I'm so proud of you," Inko said, wrapping her arms around her son's muscular, fluffy frame. She stood on her tiptoes to press kiss after kiss on his cheek and forehead. He blushed, ears twitching. "Mom, I'm not 5 anymore. Doesn't matter." She sniffled. "You're still my baby, my strong, heroic little goat." Izuku chuckled, gripping his case and giving her a hug so tight she squeaked. "I'll be back before dinner," he said as he headed down the sidewalk. "Have a great first day at UA, Izuku." At UA, Izuku sprinted through the halls of UA, speed boosted by excitement and the low buzz of anxiety. He had his map memorized, but still got turned around twice. The school was a maze of shining metal, tall ceilings, and endless doors. Finally, he reached the one, Class 1A. He stopped just short of opening it. The hall was silent, except for the faint murmur of voices beyond the door. But Izuku didn't hear the voices, he sensed. Through the door, his soul perception caught 2 strong, familiar energies. One of them was fiery, sparking at the edges, aggressive and familiar like a long-time rival. Bakugo. The other soul, calm, balanced, upright. Full of ego, yes, but also order. Izuku narrowed his eyes. "That one's definitely class rep material," he muttered. He didn't know his name, but he knew the type. Rules first, pride second, sharp edges hidden under forced manners. Izuku shook out his nerves, adjusted the strap on his hammer case, and placed a hand on the door. Here we go. Inside class 1A, the class quieted as the door creaked open. A tall, white-furred boy stepped in. Muscular build, fluffy shoulders poking out from his uniform collar. Glowing white eyes, black scara, curved horns rising from his head like a crown. Silence. Think, oh boy. Uraraka's voice burst out instinctively before she slapped both hands over her mouth, blushing furiously. A few students turned to stare. Izuku blinked. Hi. Bakugo, arms crossed in the back, grumbled, "Tsh, took you long enough." The other boy, blue-haired, glasses sharp, stance military straight, marched toward him. "You there," he barked. "You're late by 2 minutes. This is highly disrespectful behavior on the first day." Izuku tilted his head. "Actually, I was early. I waited outside the door for about 30 seconds. Also, I didn't interrupt whoever was talking." The boy stiffened. "I see. Then I apologize. I am Tenya Ida from the Semi-Private Academy. And you?" "Izuku Midoriya." Ida's eyes narrowed, but not with distrust, with calculation. He stepped back with a short bow. "Understood." From the back, Mina Ashido whispered to Jiru, "He's hot and scary polite." Jiru nodded once. "That hammer case is kind of metal." Momo glanced up from her desk, observing the exchange quietly. Her eyes lingered not on the case, but on Izuku's soul. She saw it in his poise, how it hummed with command even without speaking loudly. There's something royal about him. Before anything else could be said, thud, a yellow sleeping bag burst out on the floor. Students jumped. A single bloodshot eye opened in the middle of the bundle. "It took 8 seconds for you all to shut up," the man mumbled. "Too loud. Get dressed. We're doing a quirk assessment test." Ida gasped. "But sir, we haven't even gone through orientation." "Orientation is for schools. This is UA." The sleeping bag unzipped, revealing the same man Izuku saw in the entrance exam projection. Aizawa. He stared at Izuku for a moment longer than the others, eyes narrowing faintly. "Midoriya." Izuku stood straighter. "Sir." Aizawa turned, walking away. "You're carrying that case around. Let's see if you're as strong with it as you looked in the footage." The class stood on the training field, the sun blazing above them. Each student wore their UA gym uniforms, white-striped navy blue, while standing a loose half-circle around Aizawa, who lazily tossed a softball into the air. "All right," he said, catching the ball without looking. "Who placed first in the entrance exam?" Izuku quietly raised a hand. Aizawa tossed the ball to him. "You're up first." Uraraka blinked. "Wait, he got first. But he didn't even go all out." Bakugo growled. "No, I got first in villain points. Dimin Nerd got carried by rescue points." Mina whispered to Deku. "Still, you saw how he lifted that giant hand." The 50-meter dash, 2 students at a time lined up at the starting pad. When it was Izuku's turn, he crouched low, hammer left to the side for now. "Ready." Beep. Izuku exploded forward with bestial power in his legs, his hooves pounding against the RBB track. His fur fluttered behind him, horns gleaming under the sun. 4.34 seconds. Second only to Ida, who looked shocked that anyone came even remotely close. From the sidelines, Izuku noticed Uraraka hopping up and down. Her shoes looked lighter. She had used her quirk to reduce the weight on her own clothes. Clever. Grip strength Shoji shattered expectations with a powerful 540.0 kilograms grip. "Whoa!" Kaminari gasped. But then Izuku stepped up. He held the grip strength meter carefully, then gave it a light squeeze. Crack! Everyone froze as the screen blinked and went black. Aizawa sighed, dragging a hand down his face. "You broke it." Gear Arm, the hammer's creator and Izuku's part-time mechanic, would have smacked him with a wrench. A backup device was brought out. This time, Izuku held back, still reaching a jaw-dropping 735.0 kilograms. "Holy CRP," Kirishima whispered. "That's beyond manly." Standing long jump, Izuku crouched low, tense like a mountain goat preparing to leap over a ravine. He launched. He soared. He nearly grazed the edge of the sandpit on landing, hooves skidding just past it but not touching. Cleared. Ciro leaned over to Kaminari. That guy's like a power-built ballerina. Sit UPS and toe touch Midoriya, 93, 94, 95. Dude's doing sit-ups like a machine. Kaminari gawked. Isn't that double what we got? By the time he hit 110, Aizawa told him to stop. Next was the seated toe touch. Tsuyu went first and surprised many by reaching far past her toes with ease. Then Izuku took position. He reached forward slowly, his hooves tucked neatly under the bar, then reached just as far as Tsu. She blinked. Ribbit, you're more flexible than I thought. Izuku tilted his head. Huh? Oh, thanks. Uraraka narrowed her eyes, blushing faintly. Ball throw Bakugo went first. A massive boom echoed across the field as the ball shot through the air. 705.2 meters. Wow. Uraraka clapped. That's amazing. Bakugo smirked. Top that, nerds. Uraraka stepped up next. Calmly, she touched the ball, made it float, and gave a light toss. Infinity. Wait, what? Kaminari screamed. That's cheating. Aizawa didn't react. Creative. But I expected that. He turned to Izuku. Your turn. But we're doing something different with you. He tossed him a fresh ball. 2 throws. First, barehanded. Then, with that hammer of yours. Barehanded throw, Izuku spun his arm back like a javelin pitcher. He hurled the ball, muscles rippling under his fur. 100.0 meters. A murmur of impressed voices rose through the class. Not bad, Aizawa muttered. Now the hammer. Hammer, throw. Izuku pulled his war hammer from the case. Its gleaming design shimmered under the sunlight, engraved with a stylized angelic sigil on the head. Everyone took a small step back as he lined up the throw. He set the ball on the grass, stepped back, then swung the hammer like a golf club with terrifying precision. Foom! The ball soared a blur through the air. 730.0 meters. Bakugo's eye twitched. The class erupted in a mix of cheers, gasps, and slack jaws. I want one of those hammers, Kirishima muttered. No way, Jairu whispered, stunned. He hit it harder than Bakugo's explosion. Aftermath as the class gathered to cool down, Aizawa pulled out his clipboard. He paused over Izuku's scores, eyebrows low. That kid, he muttered. He looked at Izuku talking to some classmates, calm, unassuming, not showing off. But Aizawa had seen the glow in his soul during the exam footage. He'd seen his strength, his control, and now, potential. Midoriya was going to be something great, and he was going to make sure of it. The day had finally ended. Class 1A's first true experience at UA had left them sore, sweaty, and stunned. The room had cleared out slowly as students grabbed their bags and shuffled out one by one. At the back of the room, Izuku was packing up his notes and carefully strapping his hammer case to his back. His shirt was half unzipped to cool off, revealing part of his furred collarbone, still slightly damp with sweat from earlier. That's when he felt it, a familiar soul nearby, hesitant, fluttering, warm, nervous. He looked up. Uraraka stood near his desk, fiddling with the hem of her gym jacket, cheeks flushed pink. Midoriya, right? She said quickly, almost tripping over the words. I just wanted to thank you. He blinked, adjusting the strap on his hammer. For what? She looked down, a little shy, then back up into his eyes, and froze. His eyes. They were like sun-drenched emeralds, flickering faintly with that soul light she couldn't explain. Strong but gentle, almost too appealing. She suddenly forgot what she was going to say. Izuku chuckled, tilting his head slightly, one fang showing through his smirk. You okay? Uraraka covered her mouth with both hands. Sorry. Your eyes are really, pretty. That caught him off guard. A soft pink dusted over his cheeks now. Thanks. You got a nice, soul. He went slightly. Energy, like your aura. She giggled. You're kind of weird, Midoriya. He offered a hand, gently. Izuku, he corrected. Let's start from the beginning. She stared at his hand for a second, then smiled brightly and took it. Ochako. Uraraka, Ochako. Their hands lingered a second longer than necessary. "Nice to meet you, Uraraka." Her smile brightened even more. "Nice to meet you too, Izuku." From a hallway, Tsuyu quietly peeked in and saw the moment. She tilted her head with a low ribbit and a thoughtful look, then turned to leave. The next day at UA started off surprisingly normal. Homeroom passed in a blur, with Aizawa half asleep in his yellow caterpillar bag while the class whispered about the upcoming hero training session. It was the most anticipated part of the schedule, the moment every student dreamed about. "Who do you think's going to teach it?" Kaminari whispered. "It has to be midnight," Mina said with a wink. "Or present Mike, maybe." "No way," said Ciro. "It's got to be someone big. This is hero training, not show and tell." But Izuku wasn't listening to them. He was staring at the door, brow slightly furrowed. His goat-like ears twitched, picking up something strange. A soul, one barreling toward the room, brilliant and warm, so bright it practically hummed with pride. The door burst open with explosive wind. "I am coming through this door like a hero." The class gasped, jaws hitting the floor in a synchronized thud. "All might!" Uraraka cried. Kirishima was vibrating in his seat. "No way, it's the real deal." But Izuku, he stared. That soul had hair. He had always idolized All Might. He'd seen his soul countless times, golden, burning like a supernova, and always shaped like his iconic silhouette. But now, as All Might stood confidently in his hero outfit, the hair on his soul twitched, like it was holding something up, something fragile, weird. But Izuku shoved the feeling away as All Might threw down SWCH and said, "No hero looks complete without their hero costumes." Large capsules rose from the floor, each one marked with a student's number. As the class cheered and rushed to change, Izuku paused. Flashback. 1 week ago, Inko Midoriya wiped her brow, setting down a needle. "This should do it." Her eyes were red from staying up so late. "It might not be much, but I wanted to give you something warm, something new." She lifted a folded cloth, a flowing dark coat, layered like a royal mage's robe, deep indigo with snowy trim and runes stitched across the edges. A yellow heart-shaped clasp held the collar together. It was regal, protective, loving. Izuku blinked back tears. "Mom, it's perfect." Back to present ground beta, lit up with lights, as All Might stood at the center of the arena, cape fluttering. One by one, students stepped out from the tunnel in their brand-new gear. Then came Izuku. A hush fell over the class. He wore a long, dark coat that billowed at his legs, patterned with ancient shapes and runes. A fur-lined collar hugged his neck, the shoulders arched with armored fabric. At his chest hung a golden heart-shaped jewel that gleamed like polished sunlight. His clawed fingers curled slightly at his side as he rested his hammer over his back, strapped securely. He looked noble. He looked like something out of forgotten legend. "Whoa," Kaminari muttered. "He looks like a freaking royal knight, or a boss from fantasy." "Game," whispered Jairu, eyes wide. Uraraka couldn't speak. Her face flushed, heart skipping a beat. All Might beamed. "Now you newbies look like real heroes." The hall of ground beta was buzzing with tension. Inside the observation room, the students watched intently as Team A, Izuku and Uraraka stood at the ready, preparing to face Team D, Bakugo, and Ida. From the broadcast monitor, All Might's voice echoed with heroic excitement. "Team D will have 5 minutes to prepare inside the building before Team A is deployed. Villains, begin." Inside the building, Bakugo stormed into the mock villain base, already fuming. "Deku's mine," he snarled, brushing past Ida without a glance. "You guard the DMN bomb." Ida blinked in surprise, but quickly composed himself. "Our victory hinges on defending the weapon. Reckless fighting will shut it." Bakugo spun, his eyes sharp. "That BSDRD humiliated me in the entrance exam and again in the quirk assessment. This is where I bury him." Before Ida could argue again, Bakugo was gone, boots pounding through the structure as if the building itself owed him retribution. Outside, with Izuku and Uraraka adjusted her gloves, glancing at her partner. "You think he'll go on defense or offense?" Izuku didn't answer immediately. He stared at the building, his strange white eyes glowing faintly, the black scara making his expression unreadable, almost alien to those not used to him. "I know Bakugo," he finally said, voice calm but firm. "He's not going to sit and guard the bomb, especially not after what's happened." Uraraka furrowed her brows. "Because you outscored him? Because I exist," Izuku said flatly. His fingers flexed at his sides. Uraraka could almost feel the energy pulsing off him. Not his quirk, not power. Something else. Something deeper. Soul pressure. Heavy and commanding. "He's coming for me," Izuku continued. "And it won't be clean. So go for the bomb the second we're inside. Don't hesitate. If he catches you, it'll get dangerous fast." "All right." Uraraka nodded, cheeks flushed slightly. "But be careful, okay? You're strong, but you don't have to carry it all alone." Izuku smiled softly. His expression briefly warmed despite the unnatural look in his eyes. "Thanks. I'll be fine. Heroes, enter the building." All Might's voice called out. Izuku and Uraraka didn't wait. The moment the doors slid open, they vanished into the halls. Uraraka taking the stairs in a dead sprint, and Izuku walking forward at a steady pace, cloak trailing behind him, expression unshifting. Inside his vision, soul trails flickered like ghostly smoke, one burning hot and furious, racing toward him like a missile. "Here we go," he whispered. "I know you're there, Kakin." The cold steel corridors of ground beta echoed with the sound of approaching rage. Boom! A wall just ahead of Izuku exploded in a burst of smoke and fire. Debris flew past, but Izuku didn't flinch. His cloak fluttered, catching the wind of the blast, revealing the shimmering golden heart pendant around his neck. From a smoke stepped Bakugo, fists smoking, grin manic. "So you showed up, Deku," he spat. "Thought you'd be hiding behind that girl." Izuku sighed, gently unclipping the soul hammer from his back. And then, clang, he dropped it to the ground. The heavy thud echoed in the hallway. Bakugo froze. "What?" he muttered. Izuku's hands came up slowly. No glow, no magic, just fists. He planted his feet, lowering his center of gravity, taking a stance that looked more like a practiced boxer than a sorcerer or warrior. The class, watching through the observation monitors, collectively gasped. "Wait, he's not going to use his weapon." Kaminari blurted out. "Why would he drop it?" Tsuyu blinked. Even All Might narrowed his eyes. Interesting, Bakugo's smile vanished, replaced by something twisted. "That's how little you think of me," he roared, sparks flying off his palms. "You're not worth the hammer," Izuku said bluntly. "You want to fight me? So let's fight." Bakugo snapped. He shot forward with explosive propulsion, roaring through the smoke like a missile. Izuku dodged the first blast by a hair, sliding back and countering with a sharp jab, right into Bakugo's ribs. Crack! Bakugo's breath hitched. That punch had weight, not strength from a quirk, but from perfect form and soul-deep control. He stumbled back, snarling. "You smug BSDRD." Another blast, another dodge. Izuku ducked under a right hook, pivoted, and struck again, this time an uppercut that cracked against Bakugo's jaw, snapping his head back. He was fighting like he'd trained for this moment. Like he knew every inch of Bakugo's style. Like he wasn't scared of him. "Holy CRP," Kirishima whispered in the viewing room. "He's actually winning." Bakugo was breathing hard now while died. "What did you do to get this strong? You didn't even have a quirk before." Izuku's voice was low. "I got stronger, so I wouldn't become the kind of person you are." Bakugo let out a roar and launched himself again, blasting across the wall to try a surprise angle. But Izuku spun, letting Bakugo rush into a clean left hook, sending him spiraling into the floor with a hard slam. He skidded across the ground and crashed into a pillar. Smoke hissed from his gloves as he pushed up to his knees. And still, Izuku hadn't used his quirk. Not even once. He just stood there, breathing softly, waiting. To Bakugo, this wasn't a fight anymore. It was a reminder of everything he feared, of how far behind he really was. Uraraka versus Ida. A spark of laughter. Uraraka crept through the hallways with delicate steps, barely making a sound. The muffled echoes of distant explosions vibrated in the floor beneath her, signaling that Izuku and Bakugo were locked in their clash. She neared the target room. Peeking inside, she saw Tenya Ida standing guard by the bomb, arms folded, trying very hard to look intimidating. His voice rang out in a dramatic baritone, clearly practiced. "Foolish hero, you'll never reach the bomb." Mwaha! Uraraka blinked. Then she giggled. She couldn't help it. Ida's ridiculous villain voice shattered any tension. The moment of laughter gave her away. Ida spun, stunned. "Why, you were there." "I'm sorry. That voice was just so goofy," she laughed again, covering her mouth. He stiffened. "I was role-playing. It's part of the villain methodology." Uraraka took the chance to float herself and dash for the bomb. But Ida wasn't going to let her just waltz in. He bolted forward. Suddenly, the building trembled. A violent shudder rattled through the walls. Dust dropped from the ceiling. Ida paused mid-sprint, looking around, eyes wide. "What was that?" he said. Uraraka's smile faded. Izuku versus Bakugo, collision boom. 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 Bakugo let out a wordless scream, flinging explosion after explosion at Izuku with reckless abandon. Izuku ducked under one, pivoted away from another, then took a glancing blow that launched him backward into a wall. Bakugo grinned, but only for a second, because Izuku, through the smoke and ash, rose with a hand extended. The class, watching through the remaining cameras, stared in confusion. "What's he doing?" Zero asked. A cold glow pulsed in Izuku's palm, directly aimed at Bakugo's chest. Bakugo suddenly stumbled, clutching at his ribs. "W?" he gasped. "My arms feel heavy." Izuku's expression was calm, but serious. "I told you to stand down." His voice wasn't threatening. It was patient, like a tired warning. "He's draining him," Momo realized. "That's a soul technique. He's leeching energy directly from Bakugo's soul." "Can he even do that?" Kaminari muttered, nervous. Bakugo, now hunched and sweating, growled. His hand shakily lifted to his gauntlet. All Might's voice boomed through the speakers. "Bakugo, stop. That's enough." But Bakugo's eyes narrowed, pure rage burning through his pain. Then he better dodge. He pulled the pin. The blast, a split-second warning. The golden bead at Izuku's collar flickered in warning. Boom! A massive explosion ignited from Bakugo's gauntlet, fueled by the stored nitroglycerin like sweat. The blast erupted like a grenade. The force roared down the hallway in a tidal wave of flame and smoke, swallowing Izuku whole. Cameras exploded, static flooding the screen. The class jumped back as sparks burst from the monitors. "We've lost visual," shouted All Might. Uraraka and Ida felt the quake of the detonation ripple through the building again. And for a moment, there was only silence. The dust cloud hung in the air like a thick fog. The hallway was still scorched, cracked, and pulsing with residual heat. Rubble and smoke clogged every inch of space, and a heavy silence filled the corridor. In the center of it all stood Bakugo, panting, trembling. He thought it was over. He thought he won. His soul wasn't being clenched anymore. He could breathe. He stood tall, raising his head, scorched, proud. Thud, thud, thud. Fast approaching footsteps. Too fast. Too deliberate. Backwham. From the fog, Izuku Midoriya burst forth like a charging beast, hammerless, covered in burns and smoke. His fur was blackened and singed, but he was still standing, eyes glowing, fist clenched, and it slammed straight into Bakugo's gut. The class collectively gasped as Bakugo was launched across the hall, slamming into the far wall and dropping unconscious. He didn't even scream, just the sound of impact. Then silence. The last working camera zoomed in shakily on the scene. Dust still hovered in the air. Izuku stood upright, chest heaving. Despite burns and BLD, his expression was calm, almost disappointed. Somewhere in the class viewing room, Kirishima, he ate that explosion and still stood up. "Gyro, no way. No one can do that." So Midoriya did. "Momo, that's not just strength, that's soul-bound endurance. That's different." Back in the field, Izuku took one last glance at Bakugo's slumped form before walking forward and retrieving his hammer from where it lay embedded in the ground. He gripped it tightly, spun it once for balance, then sprinted up the stairwell with renewed force. Top floor. Final confrontation. The floor was quiet, except for the chase. Uraraka and Ida were darting around debris and concrete columns like it was a tag game with stakes. Ida used his superior speed to block her path, while Uraraka floated objects into his way to trip him up. They were both fast. They were both focused. But the door behind them burst open. Ida paused mid-dash, skidding to a halt. Uraraka stumbled to the side, blinking in shock. Through the threshold stepped Izuku, hammer resting against his shoulder, his white fur singed and glowing in the light. His eyes were still that strange black and white hue. But he wasn't mad. He just looked tired and determined. "Hey," he said, voice low. "It's over." Ida froze, stepping back instinctively. His fists tightened, but his helmet didn't hide the wide-eyed fear in his gaze. Izuku didn't raise his hammer. He just reached out and touched the bomb. BZZZZT. There was a loud beep as the lights flashed red. The screen above Ground Beta's control room glowed with large text. "Heroes win." All Might's voice crackled through the system, slightly rattled. "Ah, that's it. The heroes win the exercise." He quickly cleared his throat. "Let's, get both teams back to Recovery Girl for evaluation." Post-match reactions. The class sat in stunned silence for a moment before chatter erupted. Kaminari. "Bro, he tanked Bakugo's nuke and still finished?" Zero. He was glowing. Like literally glowing. Mina, blushing. "That fur's not just for looks, huh?" Jiraiya muttered under her breath. He didn't even use his hammer on Bakugo. So you watched the screen quietly, whispering, "That wasn't a win by power. That was a win by patience." Recovery room. Bakugo lay unconscious on a cot, still being examined. Uraraka sat nearby, cheeks red, occasionally glancing toward Izuku, who sat on another cot, shirtless, his burnt hero robe in tatters. Recovery Girl scolded him gently for pushing too far. But Izuku, he just smiled softly. Another step closer to being a true hero. The sun dipped low behind the UA buildings, spilling a warm amber glow through the windows of Class 1A. Hero training had ended hours ago, but a strange quiet hung over the classroom. Not because they were exhausted, but because no one could stop thinking about him. Izuku Midoriya. The class had taken their turns in the hero versus villain exercise. And though they all fought hard, even well, one thing was painfully clear. Midoriya set the standard. Todoroki sat in silence, arms crossed, eyes narrowed at the floor. Not even a flicker of frost escaped his side. The way that Goat Boy fought, the resilience, the sheer soul-backed endurance. It was unlike anything he'd seen. He stopped Bakugo's gauntlet explosion with just his body and didn't even use his quirk in full. That thought haunted Todoroki the most. Not fear, but intrigue and a slow, crawling sense of challenge. Elsewhere, Kaminari whispered to Kirishima, "Dude." He didn't even get serious. Kirishima nodded solemnly. He was holding back. That's the scary part. Jiraiya chewed her headphone cord. Mina blushed when someone said Izuku's name. Uraraka was still spacing out, replaying the hammer drop, the fur, the eyes. Izuku Midoriya, he had just finished tidying up his desk. His robe, stitched by his mom, had been patched and washed. His hammer, now resting by the door, glowed faintly with its engraved signature. A quiet peace settled in his heart, but something still tugged at his soul. Bakugo. He hadn't seen him since the match. Faculty Hall, exit corridor. The sun was low, and most students had gone home. But as Izuku rounded the corner near the side exit, he saw him. Katsuki Bakugo, packing his bag silently near the lockers. The golden rays of sunlight streaked across the floor, painting the room in warm colors. The blonde didn't look back, but his voice cut through the silence. "You come here to gloat?" Izuku blinked, quietly stepping closer. "No, just wanted to talk." Bakugo clicked his tongue. "TCH, talk about what? How you beat me again? How you outscored me again? What, you want a medal?" Izuku shook his head. You fought hard. You always do. A pause. Then Bakugo slowly stood up, shouldering his bag, still facing away. I was supposed to be the strongest. I've trained all my life for that. And then you show up swinging some oversized hammer and tanking explosions like a DMN tank. He turned. Eyes sharp, not angry like usual, but searching. What even are you now, Deku? Izuku stayed quiet, then finally said, I don't know everything yet. But my quirk, it's tied to something old. Something forgotten. But it's mine. And I'm going to use it to protect people. The words weren't cocky. They were steady, honest. Bakugo narrowed his eyes, then looked down. TCH. The silence stretched before Bakugo spoke again, quieter this time. Don't get cocky, goat face. Just 'cause you're ahead now doesn't mean I'm staying behind. Izuku gave a small smile. Wouldn't expect anything less from you. Bakugo huffed, adjusting his bag before walking toward the door. As he opened it, the orange sunlight poured in, and just before leaving he stopped. Thanks for not kicking me when I was down. And with that, he walked into the light, fading into the orange sky. Izuku watched him go, his hammer resting at his side. His soul was stormy, but no longer vengeful, just aiming higher. Late evening blanketed Yue in calm silence, but behind the door of the staff records office, one light still burned. Inside sat a thin, hunched man, sunken eyes, a weak smile, and a frail body that had once stood as a beacon of peace. Toshinori Yagi, All Might, now in his true form. He sat in front of a digital screen, files projected in front of him in layered holograms. Each profile of Class 1, a student's glowed softly, flicking by one at a time. But one file held his full attention. Midoriya, Izuku quirk name. Soul Link subtype. Augmented Soul Support type. Unknown, possibly mutant/fusion type quirk category. Ancient/unregistered. All Might's eyes narrowed. Still no full classification. He tapped the screen again, pulling up the sub-analysis. Description: Midoriya Izuku's quirk enables him to perceive, interact with, and manipulate the souls of living and non-living beings. This includes detecting emotional states, weakening physical stamina, and empowering physical attacks via soul resonance. Displays resistance to mental interference, spiritual manipulation, and shows immunity to forced quirk transfer or cancellation. Most notably, the Soul Blade. All Might frowned. He'd never seen it. Even in the entrance exam or battle trial, Izuku hadn't once pulled it out. But the file mentioned it with terrifying clarity. Constructed from pure soul energy. Capable of piercing most materials. Grows stronger the more emotionally connected the wielder is to their allies or enemies. All Might leaned back, arms folded. He remembered Izuku's movements in the training match. Measured, confident, brutally efficient with that hammer. But it was like he was avoiding something, holding something back. He's afraid of that sword. As he scrolled further, he saw an archived note in red, nearly buried in system logs. Soul and quirk may be fused, possibly inseparable. May not be stealable by known quirk theft abilities. Possibly more potent than OFA due to Soul Link permanence. Do not attempt forced transfer. Could backfire catastrophically. All Might's hand trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the weight of what this meant. He had spent years protecting One for All, guarding its legacy, ensuring it never fell into the hands of All for One. But this, a quirk that can't be taken, that grows with the soul, that's alive in a way OFA never was. He looked at the final line of the report. Midoriya Izuku's quirk is not just part of him. It is him. All Might sat in silence. His gaunt hand pressed gently to his chest. You might surpass me even more than I thought, young Midoriya. But deep inside there's something else. Hope. Because maybe, just maybe, the world didn't need another symbol of peace forged in fire and sacrifice. Maybe what it needed was someone who fought with soul. The train ride to UA was quiet, or it would have been if Bakugo hadn't kept glancing over at Izuku like he was holding back the punchline to a really stupid joke. Izuku stared out the window, arms crossed, his mind still buzzing over the way his soul sword had sliced through metal like butter. A win, right? A breakthrough. But he felt something creeping up behind him, not physically, but spiritually. It was the smug aura of one Katsuki Bakugo. "Hey," Bakugo finally muttered, leaning back with a cocky grin. "You remember that night I came over?" Izuku blinked. "The one after the sword argument?" "Yeah, why?" Bakugo smirked. "You know, when you opened the door in just a towel." Izuku's soul practically launched out of his body. His ears twitched. "Wait, that night? I mean the towel." "You had a towel?" Bakugo nodded. "Had, until you slung it over your shoulder like a DMN movie star." Izuku buried his face in his hands. "Oh my god, I didn't even notice." Bakugo tilted his head, grin widening. "Didn't need to notice." "I did." He paused. "Hard not to. I mean, seriously. You walk out swinging with 30 inches like it's no big deal, what?" Izuku's voice cracked at least 4 times. "T30? I don't. It's not. Why were you even looking?" Bakugo shrugged, playing it way too cool. "It was right there, Deku. I'm not blind. And come on, I'm not even mad. Just impressed. Jealous even." Izuku looked like he was about to evaporate into soul particles on the spot. "Please let this train derail," he whispered into his hands. Bakugo snorted. "Relax, goat boy. I ain't into you. But man, we're gonna have a real problem when the girls find out what you're packing." "Cat can stop." The rest of the ride was filled with Bakugo's smug laughter and Izuku trying to melt through the floor. It was the same day as the combat training, and the excitement from All Might's class had started to cool. Most of Class 1, it was winding down, gathering their things after school, chatting about their hero costumes and the day's matches. But not everyone was focused on hero stuff. Mina Ashido, forever the queen of gossip, was unusually quiet as she walked with Jiru and Hagakure toward the lockers. "Hey," Jairus said, nudging her. "You've been staring off all day. What's up?" Mina paused, then smirked. "I may have heard something very interesting on the train this morning," she said slowly, drawing out the suspense. "Oh," Siyu tilted her head. "Like what, Karo?" Mina glanced around, making sure no one else was listening. "You know how Izuku and Bakugo always ride together?" Everyone nodded. "Well, I sat 1 row behind them, and I swear I wasn't trying to eavesdrop." "You always try to eavesdrop," Jiraiya muttered. "Shush. This is important," Mina said, practically bouncing with excitement. Bakugo said something to Midoriya. "Something wild." "Define wild?" Hagakure asked, her invisible voice filled with curiosity. Mina leaned in close. "Bakugo was teasing him about the night he came over," she whispered. "And he said, and I quote, 'You walk out swinging with 30 inches like it's no big deal.'" Jiraiya blinked. "You're lying." "I swear on All Might's graves," Mina hissed, hands dramatically flaring. "He said it." Izuku freaked out too, like full-on flustered, couldn't speak, face red, mumbling nonsense. 30, Hagakure repeated. "Inches? Aye, that's. How would Bakugo know that?" Jiraiya sputtered. "I don't know, but he sounded jealous." Mina grinned. Siyu's cheeks flushed a very visible green. "That's kind of a lot, Karo." There was a beat of silence. Then all 4 girls exploded into chaotic talking. Jiraiya, flustered Sundara mode, "In no way." Midoriya, "That awkward sheepgoat boy." "No, he can't. He's too." "You sound nervous," Mina teased. "I am not nervous. I'm just..." "Okay, maybe I am. A little. But only because now I can't stop imagining it, and I hate you." "Siyu processing. I mean, he is built like someone who would have something like that." "Siyu, I didn't mean it weird. I just mean his proportions. He's a very strong goat." Hagakure, immediate chaos. "I knew he had big energy, but this..." "We need to run tests." "And no, we don't," Jiraiya snapped. "But what if it's true? We're not bringing a ruler to class." "Mina, planning destruction. This just makes everything more fun. You know how many girls in class already blush when he stretches? We're going to have to start calling him the soul-slaying stallion." No, we are not," Jiraiya said, already blushing again. Meanwhile, at the front gate, Izuku rubbed his head, still recovering from the whole soul sword concrete test. I still can't believe Kakin said that. He muttered. Bakugo smirked, hands in his pockets. Told you should have locked the DMN towel. Izuku groaned. Please, please don't ever bring that up again. Bakugo raised an eyebrow. You do realize Mina was behind us on the train, right? Izuku froze. Bakugo grinned. Yeah, you're doomed. The bus rumbled awake at the curb, brake his cutting through the morning chatter as Class 1A filed aboard in full hero gear. Steel and glass of UA's campus rolled past the windows. Training domes, support labs, a slice of forest, while the big geodesic silhouette of the USJ glimmered hazy in the distance like a snow globe left in the sun. Izuku slid into a middle row with his war hammer across his knees, a microfiber cloth in one hand. He worked the cloth in slow circles over the engraved angelic emblem on the hammer's head, polishing until the lines caught the light like a calm sunrise. His robe, Inko's handiwork, sat perfectly over his shoulders. His eyes glowed soft white within black scara, centered and steady. Yo, Goat Prince. Kaminari leaned over his seat back, grin already mischievous. Did you actually survive being crushed by the zero-pointer, or was that like a live-action hallucination? A few heads popped up from nearby rows. Not everyone had been in Section A during the exam. Not everyone had seen the dust, the hand, the way the ground had cracked like a dry riverbed beneath Izuku's hooves. It tried to crush me, Izuku said gently, still polishing. I braced it for a second, long enough to get someone free. Understatement of the year, Zero muttered. Across the aisle, Todoroki, immaculate in his costume, turned from the window. He hadn't taken the entrance exam, recommended in quiet as a winter lake, but he listened now with intent, heterochromatic gaze sharpening. You stop the hand, he said, voice even. Ow! Izuku lifted the hammer, resting it on his shoulder. Not the whole thing. I caught enough of the load to redirect it into the floor. The ground cracked, took some of the force. I dropped to a knee. Staff lifted it after. He shrugged. I was lucky. And durable. Uraraka, perched on the edge of the seat in front of him, smiled without meaning to. She'd seen the moment up close. The dust, the glow, the way his voice didn't shake even when his arms did. You were brave, she said, quiet but sure. Bakugo, 3 rows back, clicked his tongue and stared pointedly out the window. TCH. Kirishima leaned forward, eyes locked on the hammer. Okay, but dude, can I hold it? His grin was pure optimism. Come on, let me test my manliness. Izuku's mouth twitched. Sure. He rose slightly, offered the half two-handed. Kirishima grabbed it in one palm, like a baseball bat. The hammer didn't budge. Kirishima said, grin faltering a millimeter. He put both hands on it, braced his feet. The bus vibrated and pulled. Whomp. The head dropped straight through the gap between his shoes and slammed into the bus floor with a bang. The whole vehicle jolted. Several students yelped. The driver shouted, "Watch the hardware." Sorry, Kirishima wheezed, red-faced and laughing at himself as he tried to peel it off the floor. That thing is ridiculous. What's it made of? Neutron star. Dense core, reinforced shell? Izuku said, standing to lift it one-handed like it weighed nothing and setting it back across his legs. Gear arm used a custom alloy. It's only as useful as my control, though. Kaminari blinked. You just curled the mini-fridge of death. Manly, Kirishima breathed, clutching his forearms. Aizawa opened one eye at the front of the bus, still mummified in his scarf. If you put a crater in my ride, you can pull weeds around campus for a week, he droned. The eye closed again. Keep talking. Learn things. Don't be idiots. Mina twisted around on her seat, chin in her palms. Okay, serious question, she said, eyes glittering. What actually is your quirk? Like, in normal person words. Heads nodded. Even Todoroki turned a fraction more in his seat. Izuku tucked the cloth away. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. It's called Soul Link, he said. Some people label it Soul Breaker. I can perceive and interact with a person's soul. How they're feeling, if they're strong or tired, if they're holding it together. And I can touch it, nudge it, protect it, or make it harder to move. Like when you made Bakugo clutch his chest, Zero said. ever helpful. It was a warning, Izuku said. He didn't look back. But Kugo didn't look forward. Somehow, that made the row between them warmer, not colder. Momo pulled a small notebook from her belt, pen already gliding. Perception and manipulation. Emitter behaviors layered on a mutation chassis, she murmured. Do you have to maintain line of sight for all interactions? Is there an effective range? Line of sight for anything precise, Izuku said. For sensing, it's more like a glow in a fog. I can tell you're there and often how you feel. I can't read thoughts. He added that last part before the next question came. Hagakure's voice piped up from 2 seats back, bubbly and invisible. Wait, so like, can you see me? A few students swiveled, eyes scanning a pair of gloves and a boot that floated at knee level. Izuku's ears tipped, embarrassed. He kept his eyes politely on the aisle. If I turn on, he said, I try not to look at anyone unless there's a reason. It's private. Oh, Hagakure said, softer, then warmer. Thanks. Tsuyu rested her chin on her hands, gaze thoughtful. If you can pull on someone's soul, she said, how do you decide when it's okay to do that, ribbit? I wrote myself rules, Izuku answered. The bus hummed. His voice stayed steady. No touching without a danger to life, PRD. Never for fun. Never for points. And if I can talk someone down or physically restrain them instead, I do that first. People heal from bruises faster than from being hurt where they live. Jairu's eyes flicked from his eyes to the pendant at his collar to the hammer and back. That's intense, she said, and the compliment in it surprised her enough to make her look away. Todoroki's gaze lingered. Do you always see them? Souls. I can turn it off, Izuku said. It's noisy if I leave it on. Like trying to read with music playing in every room. He smiled, small and apologetic. And I don't want to know what you're feeling unless you want me to. Kaminari threw an arm across the aisle like a game show host. Lightning round, he declared. Does it work on animals? On living things? Yes, Izuku said. Animals feel clearer sometimes. They don't pretend the way we do. Robots? Shiro asked. No soul, Izuku said. But I can break them just fine. The hammer gleamed. A memory of sparking junk parted like cake flickered behind his eyes. He didn't explain. Can you turn someone's quirk off? Momo asked, pen already underlining ethics. Not off, Izuku said. But if it's tied to emotion or willpower, I can loosen the fingers that hold it. Like asking a fist to open. It's temporary. It feels bad. I don't like using it. Kirishima thumped the back of Izuku's seat with a knuckle, grinning. Man, you're hardcore and softcore at the same time. Respect. Mineta peeked over his seat, eyebrows waggling. So if you can see feelings, can you? Izuku looked at him. No glow. No pressure. Just the memory of a hand poised over a string the last time Mineta forgot the difference between people and props. Mineta swallowed. Never mind. Mina redirected with professional glee. What do they look like? She asked. Souls. Are we like glitterball? Flames? Little chibi versions of ourselves. Izuku's smile tilted, surprised at himself for answering. They're all different, he said. Sometimes a heart, sometimes a lantern, sometimes a color you can hear. He glanced toward the front, toward a certain scarfed bundle pretending to sleep. Some look like a knot you want to untie. Aizawa didn't open his eyes. The corner of his mouth did something that was almost but not quite a smile. How about his? Mina jerked a thumb toward Todoroki, all curiosity and zero tact. Mina, Momo said mildly, that's a boundary. Izuku finished, shaking his head. I don't look unless we're in danger, or someone asks. The bus took a slow curve around stand of trees. The USJ dome loomed closer, glass triangles catching morning light and scattering it like scales. A few students went quiet all at once without deciding to, the sight pulling their focus forward. It suits you, Tsu said, after a beat, eyes on the hammer. Rescue. You can find people in smoke and rubble. See who needs you first. Izuku's gaze softened. That's the part one like most, he admitted. But Kugo snorted under his breath, but he didn't add fire to it. He stared at the dome like it had insulted him personally and cracked his neck. Ida, who had been dutifully pretending not to eavesdrop on 7 conversations at once, stood in the aisle long enough to half bow, toward Izuku. For the record, he said, voice carrying more respect than lecture this time. Codifying personal ethics around a dangerous quirk is exemplary hero conduct. Please continue to do so. Izuku flushed. Thank you. Mina leaned into Uraraka's space, whispering, he just said ethics. And you still like him, huh? Uraraka flapped both hands, cheeks pink. It's not, he's just nice. Nice, Gyro echoed dryly, ear jacks flicking, and he benched a building. Hey, Ciro said, eyes bright with another idea. If you can protect his soul, can you give someone like a shield? Over the radio? If we split up inside there, depends how far, Izuku said, and how loud the room is. If you're screaming fear, it's easier to hear. Harder to help. Great, Kaminari deadpanned. Note to self. If lost, panic strategically. Aizawa pushed his scarf down just enough for his mouth to be visible. Note to self, he said, voice bone dry. Don't panic. He tipped his head toward the windows. We're staying on campus property, but the USJ is a complex structure. You'll listen to instructions, you'll treat 13 with the respect their experience deserves, and you won't break anything you can't pay for. That includes each other. Kirishima raised a fist. Yes, sir. Also, Aizawa added, no more dropping the gravity hammer on my bus. Kirishima wilted. Yes, sir. As the bus slowed toward the USJ's loading bay, the chatter thinned to an excited buzz. Momo capped her pen. Todoroki set his gloves with surgical deliberateness. Hagakure clapped invisible hands. Tsuyu tied her hair back with a simple band. Mina bounced in place, already humming a theme song that didn't exist yet. Izuku wiped one last smear from the angelic sigil and slid the cloth away. The hammer's weight settled against his palms like a heartbeat. Through the glass, he watched the dome's doors part, a wide dark mouth opening to a place built to teach them every kind of disaster. Uraraka glanced back at him, caught those impossible eyes, and had to look away before she forgot how legs worked. We've got this, she said, to him or to herself, he couldn't tell. We do, Izuku said. Outside, a figure in a spacesuit silhouette, 13, waited with an easy wave. Inside the bus, 20 hearts beat quicker. Izuku could feel every one of them if he tried. He didn't. He rose instead, slinging the hammer over one shoulder, and followed his class toward the doors, toward training, toward whatever waited inside that glass-bright dome. The bus sighed as the brakes released. The morning felt like a held breath about to be let go. Field trip, Mina whispered. Lesson, Aizawa corrected. The doors opened. The light changed. They stepped through. Inside the unforeseen simulation joint, the air felt cleaner than outside. Recycled, cool, faintly metallic. Glass facets arced into a sky of steel struts and sun-bright panes. Down on the floor, Disaster Zone sprawled out like a giant board game. A flood canal foaming and surging. A city block torn into a landslide. A forest dark with artificial smoke. Scorched structures for conflagration drills. A tangle of twisted girders for collapse rescue. A figure in a sleek spacesuit waved them in. Welcome, students, came a warm, slightly muffled voice. I am 13. As you know, the USJ exists to simulate large-scale disasters, so you can learn to save lives in every condition without putting civilians at risk. Today's focus will be, they gestured, and the dome's lights stepped brighter across each zone in turn. Assessment, coordination, and restraint. The class spread across the stair landing, clustered along the rail in their costumes. Ida stood rigid with attention. Momo had a notebook out before anyone told her to. Bakugo leaned forward over the railing like he might vault it. Todoroki watched with the reserved stillness of a lake in winter. Uraraka's hands tucked in under her chin, eyes wide. Izuku stood near the middle, warhammer slung comfortably over his back, robe settling just so at his boots. He felt it before he understood it. A shift, like the dome exhaled and the air didn't come back the same. His ears tipped. The hair along his shoulders pricked. It wasn't sound. It wasn't sight. It was the part of him that listened to rooms. Izuku's eyes went white within black. Soul sight. Souls were lanterns to him, each with their own shape and music. He expected to see the gentle churn of 13th's disciplined calm, Aizawa's knotted thread of patience at the base of the stairs, the bright flicker of his classmates behind him. He saw those, and he saw something else. One soul in the flood canal, one in the landslide, one beneath the collapsed girders, one out near the faux forest smoke. All the same, all dark purple, thin, cracks so fine they were almost unseen. Like copies. Izuku's hand tightened on the rail. "Hey, sir," he said, voice low. He reached behind and tapped Aizawa's sleeve twice. Then twice more, faster. His eyes didn't leave the glass plane of the floor below. Something's wrong. Aizawa didn't look up from 13th's debrief right away. "Clarify," he said, the word dry as chalk. "They're the same." Izuku swallowed. The four far souls flickered in and out as if they were paper held to water. "Those aren't staff. They're all the same soul. Dark, thready, like decoys." Aizawa started to turn, annoyance primed into a lecture about relying on feelings in a sterile training environment, and the fountain at the heart of the dome wrinkled like heat above asphalt. A smear of darkness bloomed there, not black, but violent violet, a mist that wasn't quite smoke and wasn't quite liquid, bulging outward with a wet, inverted hush. Metal glinted at its throat, locking it into shape. When the shape held, it held as an ovoid of void, a gateway shouldered by a collar, and the air shuddered as it touched the world. A man stepped from it, pale, stringy. A tangle of hands gripped onto him, one on his face, several mounted across his arms and shoulders and chest, as if he wore the aftermath of a nightmare. He moved like static had decided to be human. Izuku's soul sight should have flared bright or dim or something. It didn't. No outline, no lantern, no color, just presence, like a cold thumb pressed gently into his sternum and held there. A ripple passed outward. Across the zones, more figures poured through the same fog, staggered openings blooming from nothing to spit men in tattered gear, women in mismatched armor, boots, blades, quirks already sparking at fingers. Those distant, wrong dark purple slivers tore, revealing nothing, and then these. Here now, villains. 13th's visor turned. Students. At the base of the stairs, Aizawa's scarf slid from his neck like a waking serpent. His hair rose, power crackling invisibly in the line of his gaze. He didn't raise his voice. "Get back to the entrance," he said. 13, they're yours." Izuku's chest tightened. "Sir," he said, eyes still pinned to the fountain as more feet hit tile. "Are you sure you've got this?" Aizawa didn't answer straight away. He put his goggles on, as if that were the answer. "Don't worry," he said at last. Then he jumped. He fell in a neat line, scarf whistling, and hit the floor on bent knees, up and moving in the same motion. The first villain to rush him came up short like he'd run into glass. Aizawa's gaze had shut his quirk off, and the scarf coiled a loop around his wrist in a blink. Behind him, the purple fog body tilted its metal-collared neck and watched. It did not drift toward the stairs. Not yet. Izuku dragged his eyes from the man with hands, away for 1 second, and found the thing that made his stomach go still. A bulky creature at the fountain's flank stepped out into the light. It had no face to read, not really. It was muscle and cords and beak and seams, a factory answer to a question that shouldn't have been asked. In Soul's sight, its center looked like an eggshell held together by tape. Hairline fractures spidering to every edge, ready to spiderweb apart with one tap. Yet somehow, not breaking. Something underneath that shell crawled and pushed, pressed too large for its container. Izuku's breath left him and came back sharper. "Everyone," Ida barked, already pivoting to martial bodies. "Form up along the landing and prepare to exit in an orderly. The class didn't need orders to feel the gravity." They stacked into a ragged cluster, instinct putting bodies between the stairs and the portal. Momo had already moved to 13's side, asking for directives. Todoroki's gloves hissed faint frost at his fingers. He didn't step forward, but he didn't step back. Uraraka unconsciously reached and found Izuku's robe. A small hold at the hem, she let go of almost immediately. Kaminari cracked a joke he didn't finish. Jairu's earjacks lay flat as she listened for anything useful. Tsuyu's eyes were big and calm. She stood on the railing to see better. Bakugo met Izuku's stare in the half-second of stillness before chaos. "You going?" he asked, chin at the floor, where Aizawa was already moving like a problem set to speed. It wasn't mocking. Izuku's answer came out low. "No, he told me to get back." Bakugo clicked his tongue. TCH. 13 stepped forward, palm raised. The circles at their fingertips darkened, space flexing small and precise. "We will retreat to the door," they said, voice calm as a checklist, and maintain distance. "Do not panic. My quirk is not for combat. It is for removal. So please do not make me use it in a crowded area." Down below, Aizawa moved again. 3 steps, a roll, scarf snapping like a leash around a second villain's ankle to yank him down. His gaze cut left, and someone's flames died in their own throat. The man with hands watched him watch quirks, head cocked. The fog figure hovered, center, patient as a hinge. Izuku forced his soul sight to narrow, to a cone, not a flood. He kept the brute thing's cracked soul in the corner of his eye and tracked the pale man without a soul signature directly. Every hair along Izuku's arms had risen. His robe felt too thin. The hammer on his back was suddenly too light. Aizawa glanced up once, just once, through goggle glare and scarf, past the rail to the boy with white eyes and black night around them. The look said a thing Aizawa didn't have time to say out loud. "Trust me." Izuku nodded. "Ida, 13 said, you will lead the evacuation. Maintain a path along the interior wall to the entrance. If an enemy approaches, I will tidy." Ida straightened even more somehow. "Understood." He windmilled to the class. "Form 2 lines left, right, hands on the rail. Stay clear of the stairs, outer edge. Move." They moved. Izuku fell to the rear without needing to decide, turning his body to keep the fountain in front of him as long as possible while backing up with the group. He didn't draw the soul blade. He didn't grip anyone's core. He simply watched and let his quirk hum. Not loud, not deep, just enough to catch any approach that came wrong and fast. The fog body didn't drift toward them. The man with hands took a step, then another, and crouched. He put his palm over the face hand on his own head like he was soothing a pet. The brute's cracked soul pulsed once, a low thud like a fist on a far door. Aizawa's scarf whipped again. "Don't worry," he'd said. Izuku didn't. He did not worry. He counted breaths and boots and blinks in the distance to the door. He memorized the rhythm of Aizawa's footfalls, the thick, wrong beat inside the brute's chest, the absence that was presence at the center of the man with hands. He filed every detail and loaded them into his spine the way he always did before he decided whether to swing for bone or for light. They reached the top of the stairwell curve. 13 spread a hand. Air caved inward for a heartbeat, and a would-be leaper below lost his footing and slid, yelping, into a safe corner of absent space that gently deposited him away from the fray. Izuku glanced once at Uraraka. Her soul was bright and trembling and brave. He faced forward again. The dome breathed in, held, and did not yet let go. They moved as one, half-trained, wholly frightened, shuffling through the wide corridor toward the dome doors. The USJ was meant to teach calm under pressure. The drill had already toppled into real terror. Students clung to the railings, boots scraping tile, until the exit yawned like a promised shore. Izuku kept his eyes on the doorway, and, despite the roar of boots and barked orders, felt the tiniest whisper of wrongness tickle at the back of his skull. Soul sight was an instrument. He tried not to listen to it when it hummed for no reason. Today it screamed. A dark violet sliver unfurled in the air a few feet ahead of the exit. It wasn't a person. It was the same thin, cracked soul he had seen in the other zones. Only now it condensed, coiling into an oily mist that tightened into a body. The smoke thickened and took shape slowly, like ink poured into a mold. Hands, many of them, seemed to crawl along the surface and then sink back in. Izuku's breath left him in a hard, focused hiss. Aizawa's looking at everyone else, he thought, noticing the teacher's attention just half an aisle away. He took his eyes off this one, even for a moment, something that was not fully human fixed ahead toward them. Very smart, noticing me before I appear. The voice seeped out of the smoke, damp and amused. The syllables felt like wet fabric over bone. It sounded amused by curiosity and hungry for more. 13 moved forward before anyone could think to stop them, or maybe because someone had to. Their suit glinted falsely cheerful under the dome lights as they stepped to the front and spread their hands. Tiny caps clicked open on the ends of their gloved fingers like the lids of strange little cannons. "Do not move," they warned, voice iron under the muffled mask. "Hold the line. No sudden maneuvers." Kirishima and Bakugo didn't hear that kind of caution. They heard a target. "On my mark." Bakugo snarled and, without waiting, surged. Kirishima followed, like a shadow whipped. Tight to light, they launched themselves into the gap between 13 and the smoke thing in a single explosive burst. The pair slammed into the airspace with perfect, reckless timing. A concussive plume erupted where Bakugo's blast met the smoke body, a raw, furious bloom of grit and flame that threw dust like tidewater through the corridor. For a heartbeat, it looked like they'd broken something open, broken it, and the grated tiles rattled on their mounts to the rhythm of the impact. Bakugo and Kirishima landed, chest heaving, faces split wide with a blend of victory and thrill that always came when they struck first. 13's voice cut through the settling grit, sharp as a cutter. "Get out of the way, you two." Bakugo and Kirishima only smirked, satisfied hunters who'd taken a bait. The smoke did not regard their smirks as a tragedy. It took their moves as input, not mistake. Too late. The voice sighed like a curtain falling. The smoke's body folded in on itself, and then, like a mouth opening, bloomed. Not an ordinary portal, but a physical, fat seam in the air where the violet fog thickened and reached, curling fingers that were more whole than hand. It moved with terrible patience. The corridor's lighting sucked inward toward it, as if someone had turned down the sun. For a split second, everyone froze. Then the portal surged outward and snapped shut like a trap. The effect was instant. The corridor tilted, the world hiccuped, and a ragged wave of pressure shoved air from their lungs. Hand were yanked. The floor felt less solid. People screamed, some trapped mid-step, and were tugged into the violet seam. Izuka didn't think. He moved. He shoved with everything he had, 2 steps, hands like hammers. He shoved Ida, then Shoji, then Sato, then Siro, and last, with a raw elbow of force, Uraraka. Bodies slid and stumbled past him, falling clear of the portal's hungry lip. He felt each weight as if it were a live thing, felt their souls flicker like the tiny lights he always saw, and he set them free before the seam could take them. But the portal was a shifty thing and faster than luck. Where Uraraka had been seconds before, the smoke had already curled a second hand and drawn inward. Izuku's heel snagged on the edge of the tile. The corridor yawned wrong under him. He fell forward, too close, and the world ripped. He didn't feel the floor anymore. For an instant, there was a vertical tumble of air and tile and screaming voices, and the last thing he saw, the USJ, was a slice of floor tile like a lonely island drifting up, and then the violet seam swallowed him. He was falling. Cold rushed in, and the last thing in his vision, before everything blurred to a cold, enormous green, was the reflection of the portal, a warped, fishbowl bend of light. Water. He felt the smell of it, peat and metal, and something else, sharp and unfamiliar, and then the world closed. Silence pressed in, and the line snapped. Izuka didn't get a chance to steady himself. 1 second he was falling through purple, and the next the air turned cold and wet, wind roaring past his ears as the surface rushed up like a moving wall. "SHD, I always hated water," he yells as he does the tombstone dive. He twisted midair so his hammer wouldn't slip from his grip and hit first. His robe flared behind him like a soaked banner waiting to happen. He forced his eyes open, even with the spray stinging his face. The water below wasn't empty. His soul sight caught it before his body could. Hearts, souls, glowing beneath the surface, shifting like fish in a school. Most were dim and ugly, sharp around the edges. One of them surged toward him fast. Izuku adjusted his grip. First catch of the day. Nothing personal, kid, but you gotta die. The fish villain says before Tsu punches the villain out of nowhere. The impact snapped the villain's head sideways and sent ripples rolling through the water. A green blur followed through the air. Midoriya, ribbit, Tsu says, before wrapping her tongue around Izuku as she bounded off the villain while carrying Mineta. Izuku's stomach lurched as the tongue caught him clean and yanked him off his drop path. He swung over the water in a wide arc, boots dripping, hammer still in hand. Mineta dangled in Tsu's other hold, squeaking but alive. They landed hard. In the shipwreck zone, Tsu lifts Izuku onto the boat. Ugh, Izuku says as he lifts his fur from his eyes as he watches Mineta be slammed onto the boat deck. Thanks, Tsu. Mineta groaned like the deck had personally betrayed him. Story narration part, Tsuyu Azui. Quirk, frog she could do pretty much anything a frog can. Back to the story, this has turned into a bad situation. Tsu says, yeah. Izuku says, and he pushed himself upright. Water poured from his robe. He didn't even try to pretend it didn't bother him. It clung to his fur and dragged at every movement like it was trying to pin him down. Izuku grabbed the collar and tugged it off. Yeah, Izuku says, as he takes off his robe, showing him in workout shorts, and shirtless, showing his soaked fur and ripped body, making Tsu blush a little. Mineta just stands there trying to process the muscles. Sorry, my robe soaks water easily. As he wrings out the water from his robe. Tsuyu looked away fast, but her cheeks didn't. Mineta stared like his brain had stopped buffering. It's fine, but let's get to the important thing. Why are these villains here? Tsu says. The closest thing I can think of it's that they were after All Might. Izuku says, putting his robe over his shoulder. Mineta sat up too fast. Wait, it's not like they can kill All Might. Once All Might comes, he'll P&D those guys. Mineta says, punching the air. Izuku didn't smile. Yes, but something is bothering me. There's that bulking creature that came out of the main portal. Izuku says, putting his paw to his jaw, thinking. What do you mean, Midoriya? Tsu asks. It's hard to explain, but the creature's soul was cracked beyond repair, but something was holding it together. The only thing I can think of is it contains something powerful or multiple things. Izuku says. Tsuyu's eyes narrowed. Do you think it might be quirks? Tsu says. That might be it. A person's body can mainly only hold 2 quirks like Todoroki, but there are exceptions to the limitations of how many quirks. But it seems this creature is on the verge of collapse and dash. Izuku says before his ears twitch. Something moved under the boat. Not a wave. Not driftwood. Intention. In the water. UBSDRD. I'll kill you. The same villain that Tsu kicked says as multiple villains surround the boat. Izuku stepped closer to the railing and looked down. The water was full of them now, faces breaking the surface, hands rising, weapons strapped to wet shoulders. Their souls looked like bruises. Back on the boat, those guys down there are clearly assuming we'll fight in the water, right? Izuku says. Does that mean they knew what was in these facilities before they gathered people? Tsu says. Yeah, for people who gathered that much intel so meticulously, there's something strange. They sent you. Tsu here in the shipwreck zone. This means, in other words, the villains probably don't know what our quirks are. Izuku says, Ribbit, that's true. If they knew I was a frog, then they probably would have thrown me into that fire zone over there instead of somewhere full of water. Tsu says. Izuku kept his gaze on the waterline, counting bodies, counting spacing, counting how confident they were acting versus how confident they actually felt. We can use that to our advantage. They don't know what our quirks are. So, for all they know, the 3 of us could be spur powerful. Look, none of them are trying to climb into the boat. That proves they're a little unsure. Izuku says. So you nodded once. Mineta swallowed. A second later, so let's talk quirks. I'll go first if you want. Obviously, I can jump high and cling to pretty much any wall. And of course, there's my tongue. I can stick it out about 20 meters. We can probably only use my jumping and my tongue here. Tsu says, I figured you were powerful, but that's crazy. I have insane physical strength, as you have seen. I can grip souls, as you've seen when I fought Bakugo, and something that's probably the most useful, but we'll wait on that. Izuku says. Izuku then turned his head toward Mineta, waiting. I've got these sticky ball. Their strength varies. Depending on how I'm feeling, they might stick to something a whole day. They grow back as fast as I pull them off. But I'll bleed if I use too many. Oh, and they don't stick to me. I just bounce right off them. Mineta says, sticking a ball to the wall. The ball hit the side of a broken mast and stayed there like it had been nailed in. Interesting dash, Izuku says, before a giant water hand smashes down on the boat, making it start to slowly sink. Wood creaked. The deck tilted. Water rushed over the edge. A voice rolled across the surface, lazy and cruel. I'm starting to get bored. Let's get the show on the road. A villain says with an overconfident voice. Mineta's panic spiked so hard Izuku could see it without even trying. Mineta freaks out. Tsu tries to think of a plan, but Izuku stands up and steps up onto the railing. Do keep this between us, Izuku says, calmly confusing Tsu and Mineta. You can't fight them with a war hammer, Mineta says. Izuku didn't look back at him right away. Who said I only had a hammer? Izuku says, looking over his shoulder. Confusing the two, he lifted his arm, palm open. The air around his hand brightened. A thin line of light drew itself into shape, like a blade being sketched into existence. The glow hardened into a solid edge, rainbow white and sharp enough to make the hairs on Mineta's arm stand up. Before either of them could speak, Izuku closed his fingers around the handle. Before Izuku lifts his arm hand open, a glowing sword slowly forms as Izuku grips the handle, making Tsu's eyes widen. Izuku lifts the sword above his head. Don't fail me now, Izuku says, breathing before swinging it down with enough force to split the lake as water tries to fill the spot the villains get dragged by the current. The lake opened like it had been cut by a giant invisible seam. Water surged away from the line, dragged by its own sudden collapse. Villains shouted and flailed as the current grabbed them, pulling them sideways, then down. Tsu now, Izuku says. Tsu didn't hesitate. As Tsu grabs Mineta and jumps, shooting her tongue out, wrapping around Izuku. Mineta then notices the split as he starts rapidly throwing sticky ball at the split. Some villains get dragged by the current into the sticky ball, sticking to other villains. The ball hit flesh and gear and each other. Bodies bumped together, stuck together, and then got yanked in the same direction like a tangled net. Well, good job, guys, Tsu says as they jump away from the boat. The boat groaned again behind them, half sinking and tilting, while the water raged and refilled itself like it was angry about being forced to move. And then, everything went quiet for half a beat. Just long enough for Izuku's ears to twitch again. Just long enough for him to realize the water wasn't done. Cliffhanger. Thank you for joining us on this journey through What If Deku Had Asriel Hyperdeath Quirk. We hope you found it as captivating as we did. A big thank you to Dog Day 2006 for creating such an engaging story. Don't forget to visit their profile on Wattpad for more fantastic works. The link is in the description below. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, share with your friends, and subscribe to Zen and Fanfics for more intriguing explorations into fanfiction and fantasy. Your support helps us create more content like this, and we love hearing your thoughts and suggestions in the comment section. See you soon in the next video.